Allegiance.
Father, we're thankful that we have the privilege to live in a beautiful place. We're thankful for the provision that you've made for our community in years past and that you continue to make day by day. And Lord, we are grateful to live in a nation that still offers a privilege to be able to invoke the name of God at the beginning of a civic meeting like this one. And we ask, Father, that you would give wisdom. I pray, Father, that you'd give wisdom not just for the normal things that might be on the agenda, but I know that, Lord, it's been a rough week. It's been a rough time in a lot of different ways. We got heavy hearts because of sickness. We got heavy hearts because of loss of property. And Lord, things just aren't easy in many ways. We trust you. Lord, we know that this is a place of resiliency. We know it's a place where, and it's one of the things I love about this hometown, it's a place, Father, where people work together. There's due process. It's an importance of compassion for those in charge as well as for those that will have an opportunity to share their hearts. And Lord, I share compassion on both sides. I ask, Father, for the wisdom of Solomon. I ask, Father, that hearts would be pure. I ask that we would love one another, not just in this meeting, but in every conversation that we have and every post we make. Father, we love you. We're expectant that you will allow us to work together to solve all the things today and in the future that face us as a community. And we're grateful for your provision and the wisdom that you offer when we ask. We ask it in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we're going to move to our public commentary. If you're here to address the stormwater assessment, please note that we'll be discussing that on agenda item number 10. And if you're here to discuss the historical plat overlay, we'll be discussing that on agenda item number 9. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. We have our timer there, and you will hear the buzzer go off at that time, and I'll remind you that the buzzer has gone off. Address your comments to the chair. If you're asking questions during our reports as mayor, commissioners, city manager, city attorney, if we can answer those questions that you've asked in your public commentary, we'll attempt to answer those at that time. All right, public commentary from anyone?
Jody Moore on Amherst Street. And the Debt Review Committee did a great job, and I'm very grateful to them for answering questions that the citizens had. But I did have 2 questions that were unanswered, and if there's no answers today, I plan to come to the meeting with the manager on Thursday. Of all the accounts that the city has, how much does the city have in the bank right now? Does anybody know? And if you don't know, I'll ask that question on Thursday. Also, the FEMA money that's been expected, I think it's $24.4 million, so right around $25 million. I had asked Mr. McQueen at Panama City, the Panama City City Manager on Monday, and I said, is there any reason that the FEMA money would never be paid or not be paid? And he said as long as it's been committed, that they have committed to it, that they would pay it. So my question is, has Lynnhaven, has FEMA committed to paying that almost $25 million? Have they, in writing, have they committed to that? Yes, they have. Okay, can I see the proof of that when, maybe you can bring it on Thursday? I'd appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bollinger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Ms. Gaynor, Mr. Robos. I sent an email to all of you this morning, and I trusted you were able to get it. I wanted to make sure that you had the information ahead of time so that if you had any questions, I might be able to address them in an expedient way. But I'd like to read this email, or rather this document, into the record, if I could, please. There's been some confusion regarding the construction of the new Marine Sciences and Administration building at the North Bay Haven campus. The Marine Sciences building will not increase enrollment at our school. It is merely replacing existing portable rooms with a permanent building. Attached, you'll find a summary of the enrollment numbers for both Haven schools. These numbers are captured by the state on the dates noticed, which will explain the slight variation in the numbers due to the students enrolling, transferring, etc. Both campuses are at capacity, therefore there will be no increase in enrollment. Again, we are replacing the portable room buildings with a permanent building with no increase in students. The Marine Science Building will contain 6 new classrooms. Presently, there are 4 classrooms, which are modular classrooms, at the North Bay campus. 4 of the new classrooms will replace the 4 modulars that are presently on the campus. The other 2 classrooms will alleviate overcrowding in our permanent building and we currently have in the main building. So again, no additional students will be added. The Marine Science and Administration Building is a dual-use facility, just as the name implies. The building will house students and administrators. We are not increasing the student enrollment again. However, we do have administrative offices on the 2nd floor of the building. I mistakenly told you at the last meeting that there would be 10 additional vehicles, net vehicles there. However, I was wrong. There are only 7. And of course, these are administrative vehicles and they will come and go at different times, so they won't be coming during the peak times of students coming in or leaving. Finally, at the last commission meeting, the suggestion was made for a traffic study, and that was brought up. We still believe that we are doing currently the best method to get students in and out of the school in the mornings and the afternoons. However, we do not believe that the 7 vehicles will in any way overburden the new traffic system. Nevertheless, we've sent requests for proposals out to several engineering firms, and we are prepared to implement any reasonable accommodations from such a study. And also suggest, in the spirit of cooperation and partnership, that perhaps the city of Lynnhaven might want to partner with us and share the cost of this traffic study, as I'm sure that it will take into account the traffic patterns for both on and off our campuses in the surrounding area. So I respectfully request that the consideration of our development order be on the next available agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question or no? No questions, okay.
Afternoon, Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I'm going to make a statement. Deals nothing with what, John, you have on the agenda. What you created just recently is kind of a problem. And you might think you're going to address it a little later. But in a normal rain, I'm not talking stormwater assessment or anything which is on your agenda. I'm talking a normal rain. Since I have been here, has created 2 very disastrous health implications to this town. I was always taught that the sewer systems of this town are separate from another one, which is called runoff type water, okay? 77 was just closed. The only way in and out of this city was closed. It's a state road. You closed it. Why? Find out. You just took in 1.3 million gallons of water delivered to you by Mother Nature. You decided to get rid of it by dumping 1.7 million gallons of sewage into the bay. You did not notify anybody in this town that you had a health problem down at the park, at the beach. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that was a nice thing to do. I think you better take a look at what you have to get rid of, what's given to you by Mother Nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, Yvonne Bishop, 1225 Dundee Lane. I'm going to read so I can stay on topic. Mowat Highlands, I live in Mowat Highlands, so I would like to address you about the flooding river that has been created by the filling of land from the development of Andrews Plantation Phase 2. Last year in a meeting, Mr. Forhan, the engineer for the drainage plan for this development, stated in the special meeting that the flooding issue for Mowat Highlands would improve because all water that falls on the land would flow into their retention pond. We asked about the water that flowed across the land from adjacent properties, especially across the street from Phase 1, and how that would be handled. He stated it would be diverted around the property to the creek. Well, commissioners, during the recent rains we've had, that water has been diverted into a river. Slowly, well, I'll just say a swiftly moving river that has flooded my neighbor's yard 2 doors down 3 times and his pool with mud, his neighbor next to them in between. It's also turned Dundee Lane into a Carmel River with sand and sediment filling it to the creek and along the Thurso on the side. So it's been diverted. And then behind my property also to the lift station where there's a road, there's a river. The drainage plan is not enough to handle the rains we've had, and a stop work order needs to be implemented now. And until a plan can be replaced that is better effective to stop flooding neighboring lands and roads. It was stated also in last year's meeting that the developer has a right to develop his property. But I ask you, does he have that right to develop it by flooding his neighbor's land? I'd also like to show you some pictures that I've been taking along the time. As you will see, in April of 21, this is behind the Dillard's property, taken this direction. This is going towards Thurso. Then this was June 21. This was the first where they had a pump thing and then others. It's not so bad, and the water was going over there, so it wasn't on the drainage thing. Now, August of 21, we had 9 inches of rain, and the 16th has flooded all that because the rain is being diverted around the property onto an adjacent land. The water has come across, which this will be the connector road, and it's cut a ditch and a river, and also flown behind my property. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then also, this is behind our property that did not have flooding, has a river. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honored Commission, I'm Bob Schultz at 509 Pennsylvania Avenue. I guess the change of public commentary, I haven't been here for a while, is that we say something and you guys say nothing back. Is that correct? Can you nod your heads at least? Can you nod your heads? Okay. I'm just trying to figure out the new rules. And because before we could talk about anything as long as it's somewhat on the agenda, but if you don't talk, how do we know you listen? Well, I am going to say one thing. Your agenda here says, please note that due to COVID, we strongly recommend that everyone wear a mask. Well, I think I saw a couple had them on earlier, but you didn't. But yet, by your own rules, you say you have to wear them. You're our leaders. You're not setting examples. Again, you said we could talk about anything that refers to the agenda. It's the top item. Doesn't have a number. Where's your mask? Are you allowed to? You can't speak, but can you nod your heads? Can you laugh? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know who made up the new rules, but I guess if we all come up here, say something nice, you'll pat us on the head and send us home to come back again. But I assure you, I probably won't. I'll probably watch you on TV because you're not going to say nothing. I know you want to get home to your beer or wine or whatever, your wife, your neighbors, whatever you do, especially your meal. But I think you owe it to the citizens of Lynnhaven to respond, at least by nodding your head. Maybe you don't know how. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Well, we had a lady from the back. Yes.
Frank Stevens, 2nd Street in Lynnhaven. My family has been here and in business for about 20 years. I emailed all the commissioners about the storm water rate assessments, and every one of you responded. Thank you. In fact, Commissioner Perno had contacted me within the hour of me sending an email and gave me a great deal of historical information about how this whole thing evolved and where it came from. The rest of you sent information that filled in a lot of the blanks and educated me, which I needed to be because I didn't understand the issue. Thank you. My family, our home on 2nd Street is 4,000 plus square feet. We're going to be assessed at the highest rate, and we have no issue with that. This is a long-standing, long-ignored issue in the city. It evolved long before you guys were here, and I know that from social media, you're getting just bombarded with negativity. The issue predates you. You have taken an aggressive stance to resolve a long-standing problem. Thank you. We have no problem paying, our home does not flood. It's not a problem for us to pay that highest assessment because our neighbors and our friends are flooding. And we need to resolve this. And thank you again for being very aggressive as you're approaching this. It's long overdue. I was disappointed. I went to Jamie's meeting on Saturday. I expected from reading social media for that restaurant to be filled. Well, it wasn't. I guess some people really don't want to be educated, unfortunately. But thank you for posting that. Again, you had some excellent information that you provided to us, and thank you.
Hold on, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I just have some photos I'd like to pass out.
Thank you.
Primarily, I'm going to address you about stormwater and flooding issues that have happened in my neighborhood. My name's Deborah Anderson. I live at 901 Colorado Avenue, which is 9th Street in Colorado. I've printed recent pictures for the commission, mayor, and city engineer. I prepared a statement. Engineer's review of the stormwater system backing up during Tropical Storm Fred, the flooding photos, and also of the past Monday morning's rain. You may recall on Sunday morning, we had a gully washer, which was actually, in my opinion, dumped even more rain than on Monday. I can tell you unequivocally that the Sunday, the waters were reaching the ditch and starting to load into my yard again, and I was really afraid my garage was going to flood again. It did flood for Tropical Storm Fred. My home flooded during Hurricane Michael with approximately 10 inches of water. In 2019, a stormwater improvement was installed consisting of an approximate 3-foot diameter pipe beginning at the southeast corner of 9th in Colorado, which is where I live, and it goes south down to, west towards Mississippi, and then it goes south and dumps into the spillway. I think probably most of you are familiar with that. Let's see, so when that was installed, we all breathed a sigh of relief. Because it was much needed. I had just moved here 2 months before Hurricane Michael, into that home before Hurricane Michael hit. However, recent stormwater conditions have worsened, and it appears more water is now coming from upland and inundating the entrance of the large drainage pipe system. You'll see the second page of the pictures. I've got quite a few pictures of that particular inlet where it goes into this huge pipe, but it's just backing up like crazy. You can see the ditches backing up. You can see the roads are, the water is just too much water going into that pipe. It's just crazy. You would think it would handle it, but it's not. Let's see. So it's overwhelming the runoff entrance at my corner. Water from the ditches on the north side of 9th Street are also now backing up, which they never did before. They're overflowing the street and also coming into the ditch on the long side of my house. It's on the north side of my house and into the ditch. And it's also, that's just never been a problem. Finally, I just want to say that all 5 houses on my block, I live on the corner of 9th and Colorado, but between 9th and 10th Street on Colorado on the east side, all of them have flooded. My house has flooded 3 times, only twice since I've been there, but I've been there less than 3 years. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Arnett Flowers, 610 East 26th Street. I've been in Lynnhaven 18 years. I'm a professional mechanical engineer. Had just a brief question in regards to some of the storm plans affecting the Bel Air Estates area on East 26th Street and Cary and Kimberly. One of the proposals we got from a contractor, not from the city, was about a semi-abandoned easement to take the property, remove fences in other areas, and to basically make a possibly 2-foot ditch in hopes to help the people down on Minnesota that are getting raw sewage and stormwater at the corner of Walmart. I'm familiar with the issue. Back when Walmart was proposed, that was one of the concerns, is that concentration of water with the developments. And so a lot of water that people have been discussing is concentrating in the preserve area and the multi-use area between 26th Street and Mosley. And as we're developing with our future land use plan, we're concentrating more water because of the sloping. My house does not flood, but looking at this issue, there's going to be over $100,000 of fences, pools, and everything else destroyed to make a 2-foot ditch that will, in my opinion, not talking professionally, increase the water flowing down toward that corner, which is a pinch point. One of the things I contact sanitation, I tried to contact city managers, question is we have that conservation area. It's split in half for future use, which will increase more runoff. The question is, have we considered, when I've done projects before, we have put in a large pond for collection in a weir so that then we could control the water flow, release it down the ditches in the sewer system for a big storm coming in, sort of what they do for Deer Point Lake. So that was my question, because it seems like something's better than nothing, but it's going to be a very expensive something. Everybody, and plus, given less than 30 days to tear up fences and everything else, when some things like my shed has to be moved 4 foot, it was approved by the city saying it was fine. It's been there for 30 years, and now, it's like, oh, we sent a letter. I have no idea when the first letter was sent. I have the records from the first owner. No warning letters ever been sent that I'm aware of. And then you have 30 days, liens, and everything else. So it's just a little bit of a concern. Just want to talk about that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kay Lanford. I own property at 1209 Arkansas Avenue in Lynnhaven. Hurricane Michael destroyed my historic family home on 5th Street. When I received the insurance money, I chose to buy a home in Lynnhaven. I am beginning to regret that decision. I have been in this home 1 year. It has come within 1 inch of flooding 3 times. There is a ditch right in front of my house. It's dug out. My neighbor's ditches aren't. Water backs up into my property. This needs to be addressed. Simple, scheduled, meaning once every 4 years, once every 3 years, how often, routine maintenance of ditches, culverts, and storm drains would have alleviated much of the flooding in Lynnhaven. We now have a reputation for flooding and not having good infrastructure in Lynnhaven, as well as corruption, which hurts me. And in response to the Facebook post by, I believe, Mr. Lightfoot, suggesting citizens clear the ditches of excessive vegetation and debris on their property or near their property, no one, and especially not me, wants to hear on the local news that a Lynnhaven senior citizen collapsed while digging out the ditches in front of her property because the city wouldn't do it. City of Lynnhaven, do your job.
Mr. Mayor and everybody at the table, my name is Beverly Jenkins. I live at 2409 Minnesota Avenue. I bought my home in 1991, and when I bought my home, they told me I wasn't in a flood zone. Since that time, I have flooded out several times. Not each one time was when there was a hurricane. It's become extremely expensive. I used to pay $360 a month or a year for flood insurance. Because I've had 2 claims over $10,000 within less than 10 years, I now pay $1,430 yearly. I haven't been canceled yet, and I hope I don't, but we'll wait. That remains to be seen. This last water was coming into the sliding glass door of my dining room, and we just continually change tiles. My house was surrounded by water. Also, the whole neighborhood on Minnesota Avenue's house was surrounded by water. It was up to our doorsteps. I was one of the lucky ones because to the left of me, all the way down to the stop sign, there's another 5 houses, and they all flooded out completely, having to have new carpeting, new drywall, et cetera, et cetera. We get to the point when all this water, I have a ditch across the road, a ditch in the back of the house. They flood completely. The neighbor in the backyard, it's flooded all the way across it just runs down the side of the house like a rolling river. The driveway has water in it. We had to carry the dog across the street to go to the bathroom because dogs don't like to go to the bathroom in the water. This is also, because I'm a nurse, I'm worried about hygienic and health-wise considerations. We're having bugs inside the house now. I had a couple varmints come to my door that I didn't even know what they were. I don't know if they were possums or what they were, because these animals have no place to go because there's so much water, they haven't got a home anymore. We can't flush our toilets for hours at a time, nor use the tub, washing machine, or dishwasher. It creates mosquitoes. Somebody to come and help you, they couldn't even park. They had to park out by the mailbox because you couldn't get into the driveway. The driveway had water so deep that it went up over the boots. I don't know what the problem is. Behind my house, the big ditch, it only goes so far, and then it's all filled in. And I don't know why it's all filled in, because if it were cleaned out, that water could continue running down. And then when we get all this water, we have all these sightseers coming by in their cars, taking pictures, driving 50, 60 miles an hour, and the water comes into our house.
Thank you.
So, I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for all my neighbors and all the
Yes,
people
ma'am.
on Minnesota Avenue.
That's your time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, commissioning team. Thank you for your time today. I am Daniel Little, property owner of 2300 Cameron's Crossing. Today, I'd like to talk to you about stormwater flooding in front of my residence. I wanted to elevate concerns that the repeated threat of stormwater flooding in front of our property is becoming a pretty difficult issue for us. So the stormwater drains back up in our street, and the streets flood completely over, which caps off our French drains, which in turn floods out our entire backyard. I have 2 neighbors that have had water enter their properties in the last month, within the last couple of storms. So I purchased my property in February 2018. We have identified 2 separate issues since then. The first one is the stormwater drains cannot keep up with the waterfall, and they back up in the street. Sometimes I've seen as much as 3 feet deep in the middle of the road. Additionally, there's a stormwater swell between my property and St. Andrew's Plantation that the water breaches on some of these occasions, so the water spills down into the back of my property, which adds to the flooding in the backyard. Since we've moved in, there have been 16 instances where I've taken pictures or videos of this happening. Those are just proof that I have the issues that we're facing, and the dates are listed below in those bullet points. On 30 July 2021, the city came out and removed whatever vegetation that was left after Hurricane Michael, which in turn now I've lost some of the help that we had to kind of pull up some of that residual water. Some intervention actions that I've taken upon myself is I've contacted Panhandle Engineering for some help for the swale in the backyard. I've installed a 50-gallon basin and a sump pump, an electric sump pump in the backyard to try to reduce some of the water, the threat coming into the back of my property. And I've sent an email to Mr. Hood, which I found out recently probably isn't the right person that I should have contacted, but it was a try nonetheless. So the picture in the top left is of my backyard. I don't know if you can see the water. The picture on the top right is in our front yard where the city water backs up, or the storm drain water backs up. And both of those pictures came from the event that happened on 3 August. Desired assistance, what we found is the Cameron's Crossing issue that we're facing is not in the Lynnhaven Stormwater Plan dated 2019. So I asked for your kind assistance to evaluate that, maybe add that to that assistance. Looking for help re-engineering the stormwater drainage because it cannot keep up with what we're facing. And then additionally, ask for help for reconstructing the swale in the backyard so the water doesn't breach the berm and then end up in our back porch. I thank you for your time today. I wish you all well. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Jerry Parker, Rhett Place. First of all, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for responding to my email. I appreciate that. I got responses from 4 of the 5 that I sent, and it was positive feedback. I think that with you giving careful consideration to moving the commentary back to 7, it gives the citizens the opportunity to respond more, especially after the mayor's report, the lawyer's report, the commissioner's report. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think it's vital for citizens to have more feedback, and I think using your slogan, better together, when we have more feedback than less feedback. So I hope you will seriously consider moving it back to 7. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. I'm not as fast as young people. But I'm Amherst Smith, AMBUS, 601 East 9th Street. I live beside Davis Lake. We bought a house and made our home in 1978. For 30 years we lived in that house, never got flooded until, and I don't mean to be rude, but until the city built a dam across the spillway. What I mean by the dam, it wasn't used about 10 or so years ago. They put a grating across there, a deck, and now every time we get a heavy rain, it immediately gets stopped up. When it gets stopped up, we get flooded. My house has been flooded 4 or 5 times since I call it dam, was put up there. And I'm sure a lot of other people has been flooded. And the city manager, sweet, brilliant lady, I thank you. I spoke to her about it, and she sent me to talk to another man. I'm not going to use his name, but he claimed that they had to open the gate at the spillway at least twice a year. And then when the EPA called them, told them to open the gate, they had to open the gate again. I live on the lake itself. This didn't happen. I used to be an environmentalist at Gulf Power Company at a local electrical generating plant in Southport. And The EPA does not call you and tell you to empty a pond. You have to call them and get permission. You have to test the water before it's released. So I just found some things he told me I didn't understand. But that spillway grading needs to come up. And if anything else they can do to get to the gate, they have to open it. They can build a portable walkway. They can carry in the truck and use a backhoe to pick it up and set it over the spillway to open and close the gate. Put a rail on so they'll be safe. I don't want any employee to get hurt. But the solution to a lot of these people's problems is the spillway. That's where it starts. And I thank you for your time, and I do love and care for each one of you, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, that red light in front of you looks like a cigar you're smoking.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Steve Nowakowski from 1231 Dundee Lane in Lynnhaven. I've lived here for quite a number of years. It would be nice if I thought throwing a bunch of money at stormwater was going to ever alleviate any problems, especially since we're continuing to do the exact same things that created this problem in the first place, and partly is the developers that are allowed to create however they want the cheapest way to be able to maintain the stormwater, or when they reroute existing little creeks and streams through what was once wetlands. A swale requires a lot of maintenance. And what I see over these last several years is the lack of maintenance. It was very rare that you would see grass that was above your knees. Now, every place you drive, the grass is above your knees. The swales are overgrown. And what makes it or compounds it is that the city of Lynnhaven payroll has increased $1 million each year since 2017. So either we're short manpower or we're paying our people too much for not doing something. It would be nice to think that if we threw $1 million at something, we would all of a sudden magically make it all go away. But the tax is not going to help unless we fix the problem of what developers are currently doing and what they are allowed to do with the way that they move water around. I know that everybody inside this room who's a resident can sit here and we can speak about all the different times that we can flood. And I know that everybody on this commission and everybody who's sitting here in this meeting is sitting here for a reason that they love the community. We as citizens coming here to speak are exactly the same position. We love our community and we want to fix it. But we feel that holding us accountable for paying for the tab that other people are causing is a never-ending battle. And this non-ad valorem tax that we're going to add will never go away. Thank you very much for everybody of your time. We really appreciate all that you do, and we look forward to working to you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, one thing, I know it's oftentimes this is a blended issue. I know we're hearing a lot about flooding. We are going to have an actual public hearing on item 10 for the stormwater assessment. So to the extent, I think maybe that's the second gentleman we've heard from that spoke to the stormwater assessment. So if you want to stick around and actually use that time during item 10, that's fine. For the most part, everybody's been talking about their flooding issues and not the assessment, and so that's fine. I just wanted to remind everybody, if you are going to speak to the assessment, let's wait until item 10.
Thank you.
Hello, Christy McElroy, Port St. Joe. My father lived on Mississippi here in Lynnhaven for pretty close to 15 years. I grew up in Bay County. I've never seen anything like this flooding. In 2020, September 17th, there was a report that 1.5 million gallons of raw sewage spilled into our bays due to Lynnhaven. Fast forward a year later, 1.1 75 million gallons. 100, excuse me, is it 100 or is it 1.75 million gallons that spilled into our local bays because of Lynnhaven? Ms. Gaynor is the city manager. According to the charter, she's supposed to be in charge. It's not the commission. Y'all have made it quite clear over the last several years. It's the city manager. Now, y'all can do whatever you want in Lynnhaven, and we've seen you do it and fail miserably. But what you do not have a right to do is put your problems in our bay because you're not doing your jobs. I drove over from Port St. Joe tonight, and I took a lot of time looking at all your ditches. They're horrible. I don't know what sort of maintenance you're doing to your lift stations. I don't know if you're paying attention to your lift stations, but in Port St. Joe, we also have terracotta pipes. We've got 56 lift stations from one end of the county to the other. And those lift stations are checked on 3 times a week. When we have events like Fred or like Michael, it's all hands on deck, not the day of, but before, to make sure pumps are in place and everything's working properly. Very simple. Last week, I spent a lot of time on the phone with DEP. I know you got a visit coming up on Wednesday. You need to make that public, and you need to let people know exactly what's said. I also know you're getting a grant. So don't start taking credit for your visit that you have, Mr. Mayor, with DEP on Wednesday, because that grant's already in the works. But I made it quite clear to DEP, I'm not going to stop because you're polluting our bays.
Thank you.
Good evening. Joe Riley, 821 North Bay. But I'm here to talk about vacant land that has been assessed to this.
We'll discuss that on.
And
we'll be discussing that on agenda item number 10.
Excuse me?
For the vacant land assessment, that'll be on agenda item number 10.
I can't understand.
The vacant land assessment will be discussed on agenda item number 10.
Oh, so we're not talking about that right now.
No, sir.
But getting back to the DEP and the pollution of the bay, no wonder I can't catch any fish. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Gray, 1513 East 9th Street. I know this has been addressed a few times, and I appreciate Ms. Vicky giving some feedback and information on some background at Mowat Highlands. They're in the, I guess, the southeast corner where the water stagnates and kind of stays. I'm just concerned that, number one, for the citizens there and the flooding, but number two, when the developer gets done, he's just going to, hey, I'm done, and then we're going to be left to do something to remediate that, and just kind of need to keep an eye on that. Also, I contacted, somebody from the police department called me, and then Chris Lightfoot kind of looked into it for me. On 9th Street, there's no street lights, and it's a public safety issue, really. And what brought it to my forefront was, I've been there over 20 years, and it's been a problem and hadn't been addressed. But yesterday, he said, Chris did, through an email, or I am, that I would have to pay for it myself. Well, all the streets off Delaware that dead end, to include the old cemetery, all have streetlights. And 2, maybe 3 months ago, one of the neighbor's dogs got run over and killed because there's no lights. You can't see, it's really dark. And it would be really great, I don't know who else to talk to, but we really need to get a light on that street, and that'd be awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I would like to say my name is Joe Cannon. I live at 1501 Virginia Avenue. We have called numerous times to the city about cleaning ditches in our neighborhood. And all I hear is work order. I'll put a work order in. I don't know where that work order's at, but it sure needs to get done. And now we're doing this assessment. I think the city of Lynnhaven, the residents of the city of Lynnhaven, should have a vote on that. Because if you're not doing it now, what makes you think all this money that you're getting from the government and the assessment, that it's going to get done then? That's all I got to say. If it ain't going to get done, well, I pay for it. You can't get it done now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ahmad Muhammad. I live at 1240 Dundee Lane. And I hear some negative comments, and I really, I don't want to be negative. But unfortunately, the situation is very bad for us. I'd like to start with saying that the city of Lynnhaven has had ongoing legal issues with money embezzlement and the theft. I'm talking about the previous administration in the city. And this included a mayor, commissioners, city lawyer, engineer, etc. Those were elected officials we voted for, assuming that they are honorable people. This is what we assumed. Unfortunately, they allowed investors and developers to change the city to pack 70 houses in an area that accommodates only 7 or 5 houses. We don't know how they got actually to change the land dynasty, because I remember in 2007, there was a discussion about changing. At that time, commissioners voted this down. They didn't change the land dynasty, but it happened. We don't know how it happened. So what happened is, when you pack all these houses, you're decreasing the absorbing power of the soil. The law in the state of Florida is very clear. If you build a house, if you elevate the land, if you dump your stormwater, your neighbor, it's not accepted by the law, you are required to correct this. Building a drain or retention pond is okay, but if it doesn't help, if it doesn't fix the problem, you're still violating the law. And the unfortunate, the city has been nice to the developers who violated the law. The city signed off of their, I will say, crooked work or management. I'm not talking about you guys, because I know that this happened in the administration before you. I know that we voted for you guys, and I met with Commissioner Judy and Commissioner Jamie and the city manager, and I know that you guys honorable people. And we like to know that you guys will be honorable and help us, because we did the same with the previous one. When they came to us and we got the impression that they are honorable and we were wrong. So, increasing the property tax by approximately $75 to $150 a year.
Thank you, sir.
I can't finish?
No, that's your time. Thank you.
Can I have one more minute?
No, sir.
So you will not actually listen to us?
No, sir. Everyone has their 3-minute allotment.
And if it sounds like he was about to talk about the assessment, and again, if you're going to talk about the assessment, wait until item 10. We'll have a public commentary then.
Folks, my name is Randy Roos. I live at 346 Floyd Drive. I've addressed this commission before, and we talked about the park and possibly putting a water retention pond instead of a park. Because if you're going to put a bunch of money in a park while the people down the road are getting flooded out, it makes no sense to me. So I really want to stress a water retention pond because the park is high ground. Right now, Floyd Drive at the corner is the retention pond, and you can't get in or out. So I think we really need to look at that. It's just common sense, because back in the 70s, they didn't have a requirement to put in those water retention ponds. Hurricane Michael taking out that park. There's nothing hardly left over there. It's the perfect time to put in a water retention pond. So I please do it. A lot of my neighbors have been flooded out, and I feel like I'm next. So I've been there since '97, and I've seen it all, and this is really bad. So, and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir.
How you doing, everybody? I just wanted a couple of brief things. I'm on the corner of Mississippi and 9th here, right where it wraps around outside the country club where they put the circle in. The circle caused a lot more damage than we were having before. I'm sure you're aware of that. All the houses on Colorado, on Mississippi, the water just dumps in our yards. And it's a little bit about assessment, not really, but I don't think anybody here would mind paying for an assessment if they knew they were on a list to get taken care of. My particular house and the houses on Mississippi have no drain, no ditch, no nothing. So basically I'm paying stormwater damage for it to drain into my yard. I mean, it's kind of like a smack in the face. Here's the money, and watch it go into my yard. It can't even go in a ditch because there's no ditch. So that's my problem with that. And then some of the corrections you're making around here, I'm not an engineer, but I'm pretty smart. And I went out down and they just did the big bridge. I'm sure it cost you guys $1 million something to redo the bridge here on Mississippi last year. And the water from Colorado, well, what they did, the pipe's not big enough. It's obvious. The water came so thick from all the yards back here, they had dumped, it overflowed the pipe where the water just ran on top, washed all the people's yards and the whole bridge out almost. So the pipes that they're putting in the ditches are not deep and big enough. They need bigger pipes. If they're 18 inches, they need to be 24. If they're 24, they need to be 35. If everything was bigger, the water would flow and would get out everybody's yards quicker. That's about all I can say. You need bigger ditches, bigger pipes, and if we need to be on a list, I think I have no problem. I will double the assessment. I'd pay $1,000 if somebody said, hey, your street, your yard, you're going to get a ditch or a drain. I'm right on the hill, man. I just missed the hill. It would run right down to the bay. I just need something to be a drain and boom, pumping in. I mean, it's a cheap fix. It's a really cheap fix for me, but unfortunately, some people are underwater. I mean, my yard is, but at least my house is not. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
How's it going? I live off Alexander in Bel Air Estates, and I bought my house 4 years ago.
What's your name, sir?
My name's Tommy, and I bought my house 4 years ago, and it flooded out 3 times already. And like the other gentleman said back there, there's a park right on the corner. It's been destroyed for 3 years already. I don't know if you think about making a retention pond there, but that would alleviate so much water because right around that area, that's where it builds up. And that's all I really got to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am in the back.
Jenny Batay, 1611 Alabama Avenue. I am coming on behalf of all of our neighbors. First, I want to start with, I know you're tired of hearing about I flooded, almost flooded, but I do appreciate all the efforts I'm seeing right now. It's a fantastic response that we haven't seen before. Every corner I turn, I'm seeing somebody plowing out a ditch or something. But I've lived in my home since October 2015. Water's never been an issue the way it is now. Hurricane Michael dropped about 12 inches of rain on us, and we did not flood. Right after Hurricane Michael, the 1st of 2019, they finished closing in the ditch on 17th. As you'll see in the pictures being passed around, that's how it looks like on a regular rain. It is overflowing, it's not pumping, and we're being treated like a fishbowl now. It's not going anywhere. So the only place it has to go is in our homes. Yesterday, you said that it was the DOT. Well, we flooded in Hurricane Sally, And we sent a letter to the council, and they addressed it saying that DOT hadn't connected a pipe yet. They received a letter, after opening a complaint, they came back and said that they found nothing of the sort that was at their fault. And now they're installing a pipe overnight. Why has it taken multiple floods in that area to hold DOT accountable? I'm not in a flood zone. I have to pay $450 a year, and this is my last chance. We have to worry about the stormwater when just a normal rain. Lastly, I've seen the maps that are going around for the structural flooding for 2013. It's 2013, 2014. You have one house that is flooded on Alabama Avenue. In 2 years, there's been multiple floods in one home, and I can report me and 6 neighbors flooded. So I suggest updating that, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Good afternoon. My name's Danielle Mulick. I live at 610 East 6th Street. We've lived in Lynnhaven since early 2013. We've been having issues with rainwater and flooding in our front ditch. It's just stagnant water. This last tropical storm Fred really escalated the issue that's already been outstanding for 8 years now. And pictures only do so much. I want you all to see what is sitting in my front yard all the time. This is what's sitting in the ditch in my front yard all the time. Chris Lightfoot came out to my property and told me that it was overgrown and that we needed to mow it. You tell me, commissioners, would you want to stand ankle deep in this and mow it? This has been an ongoing issue for 8 years. It has now gotten to the point where my 3 school-age children cannot use our front yard. It is a safety and health issue. Period. And I posted a video of 3.5 hours of a sewer grate bubbling over, and what we were left with was toilet paper and raw waste streaming down our front yard. Hurricane Michael came, we put in a French drain and spent our own money putting in a French drain to help alleviate this problem. We brought in 26 loads of fill dirt to fill in our lot across the street. It is literally washing away into the bay. I'm at the brink of fining you guys or billing you guys for all the fill dirt and all the money that we have spent to restore our home. Because you know as good as I do that hurricane damage insurance, they don't cover restoring your yard. That was on us as homeowners. I'm begging and pleading you to help my family and I and address this stormwater sewage issue that has been ongoing for 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Arlene Harrison, 904 Michigan Avenue. Oops, sorry guys. We still can't hear back there, by the way, but that at least you guys can hear. I want to talk about Fred. I live between 9th and 10th Street on Michigan Avenue, and we were hit terribly hard. I have two old trees down in my yard with Fred. One's still sitting on my big magnolia that's been there forever, still sitting on top of my house. And but I do want to thank the emergency response people. They were there before Fred even let up. Fred was still going. Gulf Coast Power was out there. Gulf Power was out there, and they got power back, and they took down all the lines that Fred took down all the lines there on that block. 4 of the brand new power poles that have been in since Michael snapped off at the top. I tend to think that we had a tornado down that street, but by 9 o'clock they had restored the power on my neighbors to the north of me. By 11 o'clock, they restored my power. By 1 o'clock in the morning, they restored the power on my neighbor on the south end. There was also a huge amount of flooding on the south end of that block. And I think those flooding areas in a residential area should be made a no-wake zone, because we had huge trucks going through and push, while my neighbors were out there trying to keep, with push brooms and everything, trying to keep the water out of their house. They, guys went by like joyriding when these huge trucks with those big wheels, and pushed the water right back up. So anyway, moving on to my other subject, which I've brought up to you numerous times over the last 10 years or so, and I've talked to many city officials over the last 10 years or so, is what are you going to do about Roberts Hall being the retention pond for that whole block? I don't have any response to it. I see them working at the north end of that alley and putting new water and sewer pipes down there. And they had, which of course they had to tear up the recently redone paving for that alley.
Thank you, ma'am.
To do that, but I want some drainage in that area. All the water in the whole alley comes down and goes behind Roberts.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, any additional public commentary? Yes, sir.
My name's Bill Carter, and I live in Mowat Highlands, and we're worried about that development they're putting in over there. How much money is it going to cost to clean up that when they're finished with it? They put in 500 dump truck loads of dirt in there to build it up. Where's all that water going to go to? Probably in Mowat Highlands, right where we live. We're worried about it. How much is it going to cost to clean that up when they get finished walking off with their profits? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Manager, City Council. My name is Greg Stiles. I'm a local realtor and licensed engineer for 25 years. I live on Delaware Avenue, north of 389. And if anybody here lives on Delaware in that area, or Texas, or Wyoming, we flood. Twice in the last week, my roads look more like the Delaware River than Delaware Avenue. I appreciate you addressing the situation. It's overdue. In our situation, on our street, you can do everything you can, but until you hold Bay County accountable on 389, where it drains into Betty Bayou, nothing is going to change. I wholeheartedly agree with the gentleman from Dundee Lane. He has the same situation. All these new developments are not inside Lynnhaven city limits. It's Bay County. Again, I appreciate you addressing this situation, and part of that is holding Bay County responsible for their end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for your public comments. This time we have the mayor's report. With the mayor's report, I'd like to address a few things. One is the debt review. That was a committee that I recommended and the commission approved to meet for 90 days. If you were here earlier, you had a chance to hear from the debt review committee as they were able to give their presentation. I think one of the big takeaways from the debt review committee, one was to identify how much debt the city had. Also, it was able to identify that at least 50% of the debt that we have is really due to Hurricane Michael. And so that prior to Hurricane Michael, our debt wasn't really rising as aggressively as some might have predicted. But due to Hurricane Michael, we had to have a substantial increase in debt in order that we might be able to float the city financially until we could see where we were with our debt. So as a commission, later on, we're going to discuss how often the Debt Review Committee should meet along with those who provide input to the Debt Review Committee so that we can keep an eye on our debt and see how we can continue to decrease our debt as a city. With the Charter Review Committee, another committee that I recommended and the commission approved, they've met twice already, and they'll meet again in September. Please remember that these meetings are open to the public, and so we encourage you to attend these meetings, and whenever you're given an opportunity, if given an opportunity, to provide your input as it relates to our charter. Also, Tropical Storm Fred, I want to thank the city staff for the efforts that were put in prior to Tropical Storm Fred in making preparations for us to try to receive as much rain as was given by Tropical Storm Fred. So what I had a chance to see as the mayor was all hands on deck, and so it wasn't just the Public Works Department, but it was all departments working together to try to do whatever we could to alleviate the storm rain that came with that tropical storm. So I want to thank all of those who did that. During that time, various department heads as well as city workers, I mean, even our staff that works in the administrative building at City Hall, were all sort of driving around looking at the different flood areas and just alerting one another to those flood areas so we could try to block the roads off, but as well as tabulate what those flood areas were so that we could assess those and try to address those after the storm. As it relates to storm water, this is not necessarily dealing with the assessment. We'll discuss that later. But as it relates to storm water, after our last commission meeting, I did mention that I will be meeting with the city manager and Mr. Bobby Baker, Mr. Chris Lightfoot to address the stormwater issues. Soon thereafter, we had some other rain events, and so we have met within these past 2 weeks. I've been able to meet with the city manager and the stormwater team. We've met at least 4 to 5 times to actually sit down and look at the stormwater issues in our area. One of the things I have spoken with the city manager about, that as mayor, I would like to prioritize our stormwater here in Lynnhaven, and would like to do what we can to try to address and alleviate those issues. We have also most recently met with our engineering consultants from Panhandle Engineering to review our 2019 Stormwater Plan, which is also posted online, as well as with Mr. Baker, Mr. Lightfoot, to see what areas would give us the most relief if we were able to have enough finances to improve those areas. And so do want you to know that as city leadership, we do hear you as it relates to stormwater. Again, we heard you tonight, and so thank you for coming and expressing your concerns as it relates to flooding, as that basically seconds what we're actually trying to do. And so I do want to thank the city manager and her staff for addressing the stormwater issues. And I can tell you that it is a priority for us as a city to address storm water. Again, this isn't an issue that has come to us overnight, and so it is going to take us a little while to alleviate that. Again, we do have a stormwater plan, and we've actually added to that plan since that plan has been posted. So I know some of you were concerned whether or not your area is going to be addressed, although you may not see it listed on the original stormwater plan. Mr. Chris Lightfoot is actually tabulating a list of flood areas and areas that need to be addressed, and so we are continuously updating that stormwater project list and seeing, you know, what the financial burden will be to address that list. So do know that as it relates to stormwater, that we're just not sitting back, that we're not ignoring you, that we are looking at the issues and doing what we can to address those issues. We will be meeting with the state on tomorrow to talk more about what type of assistance they can provide as it relates to stormwater. I'll also be meeting at a later date with our county commissioners to discuss with them maybe some collaborative efforts that they can provide with us to also help with stormwater. I would also like to thank all of the resources that were provided to us during Tropical Storm Fred to help us try to alleviate some of the stormwater that we were dealing with here in Lynnhaven. So it wasn't just all of our workers. It was a community effort. We had some county workers, and we did have the state to come after the tropical storm to try to help us. So it was a very collaborative effort to work on that. So just want to assure the citizens that we do hear you and we do see the stormwater issues, and we're doing what we can to try to work on alleviating those. I would just ask, and I know it's hard, this is a hard ask, just ask that you'll be patient with us and that you watch the work that we do over the next months and years as it relates to stormwater. I cannot tell you if you're if you will be prioritized as the first one on the list. What I have asked, and I'm not sure how they will handle this, I have asked the city manager and her staff to look at what areas could we address that would again provide the most relief for a larger amount of people. Would that be Pine Forest? Would that be Bel Air Estates? That we can try to help alleviate the most stormwater in a particular area. So again, stormwater is a priority for me as mayor, and so that's something that I'll be looking at to address. I will be also trying to meet with our state representatives, State Representative Trumbull and Senator Gaynor, to see if there are other funds that can be helped provided to us so that we can address the stormwater issues in a more proficient manner. Some grants we're waiting on, some grants we've been approved for, some grants we've been denied. And so we do need finances in order to address these issues. So do know that I'll be working on the behalf of all citizens to try to make sure that we can do what we can to alleviate these stormwater issues. In my final remarks, I know some are concerned about how we are now sort of formatting our agenda. Prior to becoming mayor, I attended commission meetings for about a year and a half, 2 years. And when I would come to the commission meetings, I would see the agenda item I would see public commentary as agenda item number 7. I would see the public come up. I would see the public ask questions, and I would see no response to those questions. And then later on, I would hear the public basically complain that no one is answering our questions. And so upon becoming mayor, I met with the city manager and told her I think it would be a good idea if we would move this to agenda item number 3 so that people could ask questions, not that anyone's stopping anyone from asking a question. So I do want to provide clarity on that. For some reason, that's a bad rumor going around the communities that we're stopping people from asking questions. I don't stop anyone from asking any question. I really haven't stopped anyone from saying anything, even if it's lies on me or, bad allegations towards our city or staff. We allow you to have your freedom of speech to say what you desire to say. However, in order that we might, one, maintain decorum, I've asked the commissioners, city manager, city attorney, not to respond to those questions. One, you might be heated, they may be heated, and if you make a direct comment towards someone, they may not be so nice and kind as myself in their response. And so we don't want to, we're on TV for a lot of stuff already, right? We don't want to be on TV for a bad commission meeting with back and forth between our citizens and our city leadership. But also what I've asked is that after you ask your questions, city manager takes notes, our city attorney takes notes, myself, others, we take notes, and that during our reports, we're able to try to respond to those questions. And so I know when our reports come, you may be in tune or may not be in tune, but I do ask that you listen to our reports for the answers to the questions that you might actually have. And so moving the agenda item to moving public commentary to agenda item number 3 is not, as some have stated, to stifle anyone's freedom of speech. It's not to try to prevent you from asking any type of question. It's actually so that we may be able to answer those questions that you do have. And I do encourage you that if your questions are not being answered here in city commission meeting, please reach out, send an email to city commissioners, city manager, and we'll do what we can to try to respond to those questions that you might have. All right. Commissioner Aldridge.
Thank you, Mayor. I kind of want to echo the sentiment that we hear the citizens. We hear you loud and clear. My yard as well is flooded. My children can't go in the backyard and play or jump on the trampoline either. And I live in a newer development with retention ponds, and they're just overflowing. They're full of water. I went to the Panama City Commission meeting this morning, and they're having many of the same issues, and the residents are saying the same things over there that you guys are saying here, and the same issue that we're all having, because we all got water. Every one of us are in this together. One of their solutions was to do a stormwater study. We're already ahead of that curve by a couple of years. We've already done the stormwater study. if you don't know what you're looking at, you can't fix something. So we brought in professionals to try to look and tell us and advise what's the best way to go forward. Also talked to a Bay County commissioner. They're having the same issues, flooding all over the place. And I said, well, what's going on? Because like many of you guys, I've lived here for quite a while. I remember 2013 when it rained for like 40 days and nights. And it was water everywhere, but it still didn't seem to have this amount of flooding. And this is kind of what I've come to the conclusion of, and it's not the answer to all, it's not the be-all, end-all answer here, but there's some common elements and some threads that are running through this entire area, not just in the city of Lynnhaven. The first thing I deducted out of this, there's been 100 years of very little improvement to infrastructure, whether here, whether Bay County, whether Panama City, very little. Reason why? Politicians don't like taxing people. People don't like paying taxes. I'm right there with you. But it takes money to fix things as well. And so people have kicked the can down the road many times throughout 100 years. I'm not talking about just the last commission or anything like that. I'd talk about the commission in 1929, whatever. They didn't do anything to help anything. The other one is that we're saturated right now. The ground is absolutely saturated. We usually get 6 inches of rain. I think we're coming up on close to 18 inches of rain for the month of August alone. The retention ponds, like in my neighborhood, they're overflowing. They're flowing into wetlands at this point. They're doing absolutely no good other than maybe slowing the water down a little bit. Another one that we don't think about much, or that hasn't been tossed around much, I did go to a conference or a speech by Bob Micah back a couple years ago right after Hurricane Michael, and he advised that this would be an upcoming issue. And the reason why, and again, this is honest to goodness truth, there's 80% less trees in our county. Our pine trees, and an average adult pine tree drinks 100 gallons of water a day in a rain event. An oak tree, 150 to 200 gallons. You look at the pictures, you look at your yard, you look at my yard, which used to be full of trees, there ain't a tree there, as you know. Michael took them all away from us. There's nothing drinking that water or taking it down. One of the other points is the growing population that we have here. And again, I'm not making excuses, I'm just giving food for thought. The growing population in Bay County, where it's not gonna stop. People are coming here from up north, they're coming here from out west, they're coming here from other areas, and it's putting a strain on the infrastructure. The infrastructure is not there for it, for this growth at this time. On the flip side, we have a debt review committee, as we talked about this morning, or this afternoon before this meeting, and they're saying, look, your debt's good right now, but it could be teetering if we're not careful, if we're not watching it, which we decided to do a yearly committee to review our debts to make sure that we're not overextending the city and getting ourselves in trouble. Again, those aren't excuses for anything. My yard floods, it's flooding just like yours is. I sympathize. No decent person would not care if someone else's home is flooding. I can't imagine anyone not caring about that. But it is a myriad of issues. And this board has been here, every one of us, I think, 4 years or less. 4 years or less. The city was chartered in, 1914. So I agree with what the mayor's saying. You guys, please have patience with us. We've bought trucks to try to clean out the pipes. 8 months ago, Chris Lightfoot was getting all sorts of praise for having the guys out there digging the ditches. And they have continued to try to do that. There's also extraneous factors such as we had, I think, half of our public works department out 2 weeks ago for COVID. We had nobody hardly working. We were pulling people from other departments to try to go work. And again, I'm not trying to get you guys to sit here and go, oh, we'll pour them. No, I understand. I understand exactly where you're coming from. But again, there's a myriad of issues for us to consider and for us to digest as a community. And let's fix the problem. I mean, let's fix the problem. That's the whole reason we've been studying stormwater for years and trying to come up with a plan to fix these problems. And I know people are angry. I understand that. You have a right to be angry. But just bear with us, and let's work together and try to make it happen. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perno.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank you personally and City Manager for how you handled Tropical Storm Fred. You got out in front of it early in the morning. You put out on social media. You were visible. You were out in the city, And I'd like to thank every employee for the city for what they did over and above during Tropical Storm Fred. My heart goes out to everyone who spoke today on the city flooding. It's not a coincidence that we have 16 projects that we want to fund for the stormwater assessment. 16 of you got up and talked around with different addresses around the city. So I would only assume that hopefully the assessment funds the 16 projects that can throw the net over these 16 different people from all over the city and everyone else who's having issues. I did hope that the Mowat Highlands issue would be more contained as they build out that other development and place the drainage in place. I don't know. Commissioner Warwick, I know that it's dear to your heart, and I remember when you looked at us as a citizen and said, you know, when's your term up? If this happens, I'm going to be in front of you, and that stuck in my mind. And I, you know, from what the videos I saw, and thank you for bringing it all to our attention. But there's big questions out there, and we're right there with you. But I'm hoping that what we're doing is going to face this head on. The 1911 plat is going to be coming up tonight. I look forward to talking about that. There's a lot of balls in the air on that. And, ma'am, I know it might not be the decorum, but I did not email you because I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you that number 3 or number 7, I'm just wanting to know that you get your voice to be heard. And personally, I feel like I'm hurt by not being able to respond. I want to interact at the meeting. So I'm doing what the decorum is, but in my heart, I really want to answer the darn questions when you ask them. But I don't know what's going on in the meetings, but to me, I think it's proper that we speak back and forth. But that's me. That's not what's going on here. But I wanted to say that to you personally, and I'm not apologizing because I wanted to look at you today in the meeting and say that. So, with that, I still like to thank all the city employees and all our first responders. And with that, that's my report.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Ward.
Yes, I went to the Charter Committee meeting. They had their first meeting, and they started going through the charter line by line, which is awesome. That's something that's really personal to me, and I would recommend residents to go to it also, because it's not a very long document, but it's a very important document of how our government is ran. It's basically our U.S. Constitution. So let your voice be heard. They're going to talk about term limits and things like that probably be very important. All the things I got, it probably doesn't sound important to talk about this, but I went to the kickball playoffs and got to see firefighters. They gave them second place, and I think it was Steverson Air Conditioning. They ended up winning the playoffs, which I thought was awesome.
Bunch of ringers.
I did have my meet with the commissioner. I had 8 people that attended, and I know it's going to be hard to believe, but we talked about stormwater. And one resident actually brought in their assessment letter because they thought that they were supposed to be in Tier 1, but they were in Tier 2. And we brought up the Bay County Appraisal website, and I showed him how it was calculated. And he understood that. And we talked about the different committees and the vision for the city and got their inputs. And we had some very constructive conversations. And then, of course, many emails and phone calls and that of stormwater. And I know a lot of residents are upset, and you have every right to be upset. I'm upset. This is something that should have been taken care of years and years and years ago. I don't want to sit here and try to point fingers, but stormwater is something that I campaigned on, and I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that we get it fixed. It's not going to happen overnight, But I hear you. My heart goes out to all of you, especially the ones that houses got flooded. Tears me up to hear that. I am so sorry that happened to those people. And it's up to us to try to prevent things like that in the future. And appreciate everything the city's trying to do with the limited manpower that they had with COVID. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Tender.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, over the last couple of weeks, it's the same. I've talked water, walked water, and talked a lot about it on the phone and a lot in person. I have forwarded videos that have been sent to me regarding the flooding, and the videos are very disturbing. I know that my backyard floods, but my backyard floods because we covered up the ditch, the creek, if you will, and put a pipe in there. Obviously, the pipe is way too small because all the water comes to my yard now. And that was a political favor that somebody did for somebody who used to live there. So now we're paying the price for it. But the problem didn't just happen. It is going to take a long time. I don't know if you've all seen the chart. I mean, there's actually a plan with locations in mind. The cost is going to be horrendous. It's not something we have the money for, but I also think this is a perfect time for the commission to sit down and tighten our belts and take some of that money that is being, well, no, I can't say frivolously because everybody thinks they need that project or whatever, but I think it's time to tighten our belts and put some money where our mouths are, you know, and use some of that. I had a resident tell me this today, and I think, personally, I think it's something we should entertain, and it's putting a moratorium against building projects until we get the infrastructure straightened out. And I think that we've got to have infrastructure corrected. It's got to be going in certain directions. Depending on where the location was, people on 16th Street, I've heard from many of them, and they said they never had this problem before we messed with the 17th Street ditch. I don't know anything about the 17th Street. I don't pretend to know anything about it. I know they just worked on it a while ago, but everybody has their own philosophies and, you know, how all this is happening. But I just feel like we're growing so fast. And somebody, I think it was Commissioner Aldridge, just said this. We are growing so fast. There's nowhere for the water to go, you know, and it is true. I heard somebody else say it earlier. The developments that are coming in around housing, Mowat Highlands is a perfect example, and it's not just to the left, it's also to the right. The doctor that was here and he spoke earlier, I've been to his yard, and you cannot walk through this man's yard, his front yard or his backyard, without your feet getting wet. And this was long before Fred. I mean, I walked through it months and months ago, and I know Jamie has been there too. There's something very wrong back there in his backyard. And he brought in loads of dirt, and now it's all washing away, of course, but there's a lake there. And of course, the developer will tell you, and I was told by the developer, that's city property. And they claim we need drains. We need things to implement the drainage off these places. But I think we need to hold the developers more accountable, and they've got to start paying for some of this that we don't have the money to pay. But I'd really like for us to look at a moratorium against any kind of developments and building until we can address this in a real way, not just, I feel like we're sitting around having tea and telling our war stories. I feel like we need to come up with a plan and make it work and actively do it instead of just talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. City Manager.
Thank you. The last 2 weeks have been very hard for all staff, including myself, to go out and to see the flooding and all of the flooding that's taken place in so many residents. I can tell you, we do this not just before storm comes, not 2 days before storm comes, and I think you can all attest to this because you've seen city workers out. They are working night and day to try to mitigate as much flooding as possible. But you know, and I know, there's only so much that we can do on this level until it's fixed. And so first and foremost, I want to thank the commission for being very supportive of us and being out and trying to help as many residents as possible. And secondly, I want to thank every single staff member. We were out in Fred, winds blowing till about 9 o'clock at night. And that is with us preparing a week before. But it is a large amount of rain that we have received. In the month of August, we received 18 inches of rain. And that is a lot of rain. But I agree with Commissioner Tender, it's not something that started yesterday. It started several years ago, and I can tell you that I believe 1 or 2 or 3 people on this commission did start this path about 3 years ago in 2019, trying to put a little bit of money into stormwater to help, and it's just not enough. So I want again to say thanks to the staff and first responders and everyone else being out there to help. And we are going to get it fixed. It is going to be fixed. And we all one day, while we sit around the room, and there surely may be some feelings that maybe not, you don't want to feel right now, but there will be a time that you will look back on this and say, Lynnhaven is truly stronger together, and that we are going to make it through this tough time. We are not the only city flooding, although you would think it was by the news, but we are stronger together, and we are going to get it fixed. So that's the first thing I wanted you to know. Secondly, Table Talk will be Thursday at 5:30. Please come out. We invite you to come out, ask questions. It's a much more informal sitting that we talk to each other and we talk about real problems. People are respectful. They ask real questions. Residents get a lot of information back. So I encourage you to come out. Many of our residents do attend. And as the mayor said, we do have some meetings with FDOT. I had one last week, had one this week, and we are seeing some progress. We do have a serious issue in terms of 390 project causing a lot of the flooding that's going on right now that we are going to address hopefully tomorrow. But I want you to know that we are working for you. We're working for the citizens of Lynnhaven. And Miss Arlene, I love your idea about putting up no wake zones. That is one of the things that we will put out and we will implement. I like that. So thank you all, and that is my report. Kiki, if you will come forward.
It's really not a question, kind of a statement. You sent me 2 invoices from Panhandle Engineering, and one of them was the bill from Santec, who are the folks that brought the stormwater presentation.
Yes.
And I guess my question's really for the city manager. Did Panhandle actually pay Santec? They hired them, it looks like?
I think that when Stantec came on board back in 2019 to 2018, there was a study done, and Panhandle worked with them. So yes, that is that's exactly right, Ms. Turner.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one thing to my report, if I may.
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's very important. This past week, we lost a former mayor. Bob Gardner passed away. And I couldn't even tell you how many years Bob was a mayor, but it's not been in the paper yet. His family's still going to be making arrangements. And I just wanted to let his family know that we're thinking of him. We know what it's like to be up here. And our condolences go out to the family. Thank you.
Mayor, lastly of my report, I do have a check from Ford Tetra Tech, who helps us to get back all our reimbursements of $29,000, and that is from the Disaster Recovery Bond account.
All right, thank you. City Attorney.
I just wanted to give one update. We did meet last week with the development team from Marina Island. You know, we've left that where we're trying to get our hands on a deed for the right-of-way property so we can move forward with rails to trails. So I think that was a pretty productive meeting. They do have an attorney working with them, and there's a draft deed floating out there that we're working with him on to try to hopefully get a resolution to that without having to fight or go to litigation or anything. So I just want to let you guys, and Vicki was at that meeting with Amanda and other staff. So I think it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully we'll get a deed to you and get some rails and trails.
Thank you. This time we have our consent agenda. On the consent agenda are the minutes from 8/10/21, regular meeting minutes. I need a motion to approve consent agenda.
Move to approve.
I just had one thing. I noticed in the minutes it said, under my comments, that the average house is assessed $125,000, so people are paying about an extra $25 on average each year. Actually, what I was saying was the millage rate's going down by 0.2. The average house, $125,000, which would decrease it by about $25 a year.
Right.
That was the only thing I had.
Okay.
Second.
All right, it's been motion and second to approve the consent agenda with that amendment or that change from Commissioner Wark. Any discussion from the commission? No discussion. City Manager, if you'll call the roll.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Wark?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes. Motion passed. This time we're moving to old business. A public hearing for agenda item number 9, the final reading for ordinance 1117, proposed amendments to section 4.02.01B of the Unified Land Development Code, the 1911 Historic Plat Overlay. City Manager, if you would read it by title.
Sure. Ordinance number 1117, an ordinance of the City of Lynnhaven, Florida, amending section 4.02.01 of the Lynnhaven Unified Land Development Code related to minimum lot area in the 1911 Historic Plat Overlay District, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an immediately effective date.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing.
Can't hear you.
This is a public hearing. Push it up. Sorry. Okay. Ordinance 1117 consists of amendments to section 4.02.01 of the city's Unified Land Development Code pertaining to the required lot dimensions for properties located in the 1911 Historic Plat Overlay District, having a low-density residential future land use map designation. So this is only for those properties that have a low-density future land use map designation. Prior to December 2012, a building lot had to be at least 15,000 square feet in size unless it was one individual 50-foot lot that had been purchased and recorded prior to the 1975 tax rolls. Or actually, I want to add there also, as you'll see in the language that would be put back in from the original ordinance, if someone had purchased two, it's kind of complicated. If somebody had purchased two 50-foot lots, they could build one house. If they had odd number of lots, there's a table. So if they had three 50-foot lots, they could have two lots, split it into two, but the lots had to be either 15,000 square feet, or as you saw in that table, that configuration had to be at least 150 foot long if they were 75 foot wide. What happened in 2012 was that Changes were made to section 4.02.01 to allow property owners to split their parcel into smaller sizes than previously allowed to create smaller buildable lots. This change increased the requests that the city received for minor subdivision applications, with developers purchasing corner lots which were 150 by 100 feet to split into two 75 by 100 feet lots, thereby meeting the new 7,500 square feet size requirements. It also meant that owners of multiple lots which were 100 feet deep could split their lots into 75 feet wide buildable lots. Recently, during a presentation workshop, the City Commission expressed a desire to revert the changes back to the requirements for the larger lot sizes in the 1911 Historic Plat Overlay District and requested that staff bring the proposed changes back to them. And this is the ordinance that does that. I wanted to give you a visual because I know that this can be a little confusing. So I wanted to give you a visual of what is currently allowed. So this is what was changed in 2012. Currently, can you see in the red those two 50-foot lots, lots 11 and lot 12? Currently, if someone buys two 50-foot by 150-foot lots, which is what this is, so basically that parcel is 100 by 150, they can split it down north to south to create two 75 by 100-foot lots, thereby a 7,500-foot lot for each one, and build a house. But what they're doing is they're changing. Can you see the 50-foot lots there? The frontages are on that side street, on the street that runs north to south. So when they split it, the entrances will now be on the south with those new created lots. This is how it used to be, and this is what it would go back to if the ordinance was adopted. They wouldn't be able to do that with two lots anymore. In order to be able to split the lots, they would have to have three 50-foot lots together. And then they could split that middle one down through the middle so that they have, still have 75, but it'll be by 150. So thereby, developers can still split lots, but the lot size, if they were to do this, would be 11,250 instead of the 7,500. And I know it is confusing, but this is how it used to be prior to the change in 2012. Now, if somebody owns one 50-foot lot, if somebody just owned lot 12, and it was recorded in the 1975 tax rolls as one individual 50-foot lot, they could still build on that 50-foot lot. We have the tax rolls and we can check for them. So I know that's really confusing, but this is how it used to be. And if you revert back, if you adopt this ordinance, it would revert it back to this instead of this. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we open the floor to hear from the public.
Rich Walker, 1106 Missionary Avenue. This deals with the historical area of Lynnhaven. Be advised, there is no historical area of Lynnhaven. There's nothing historical here, just a bunch of old buildings. To be a historical building, you must have an application to the state of Florida first, and you'll be declared historical. Then you can go on to the National Registry if you want to do that. Only one building in this town is closely to be qualified for that, and that is Roberts Hall. All your historical buildings in Lynnhaven on this side of 77 have been destroyed. Nothing left. Everything is over on the other side. So to deal with this has jeopardized the lifestyle and quality of life for most of the people that live in this area. I know because I have the development going around me right now. I have 2, 4, 6, 8 houses being built where normally would be 4. This will surround me because after Hurricane Michael, we learned that Most of the people in this city do one thing. They build fences. These people fenced in everything. There are no trees left except where I am. The builders coming in here now with these new lots, the way you're doing it, they take all the trees down. One of the builders took all the trees down, had FEMA take them down, and the city had to pay for it. That's the way they do it. The houses that are being built are not low-income housing. And believe me, you've done your study on this, and there's 100 lots in the area. That's not really true. There are more than 100 lots. Because the builder goes and buys 10 feet from his other neighbor and adds to these other lots to get his 75 feet. And they do it. I know. They've done it right next to me. What you've got here is another thing. And one of your commissioners is very interested in this. Service support. On these corner lots, there is no service support for sewer for one of these houses that are built alongside each other. You know how they get away with this? The builder runs the sewer line from the one house to the other to get the attachment where the service is, and has an easement through his neighbor's yard for their sewer line. That's how they're doing it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Oh, I thought this was a public hearing. Public hearing is 3 minutes also?
Yes, sir.
Whoa. Whoa. You don't get much time to talk about this. You've got to really think about this. May I make a recommendation that you make this immediate?
Thank you, sir.
Stop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I am Teresa Dyer. I am Government Affairs Committee Chair for the Central Panhandle Association of Realtors. The Central Panhandle Association of Realtors believes the proposed ULDC amendment ordinance 1117 would create negative impacts for the availability and attainability of affordable housing in Lynnhaven. This amendment would potentially cause negative impacts to builders, home buyers, and the local economy. Currently, we are seeing a trend both nationally and locally of extremely low inventory and high demand for housing. As of last week, the city of Lynnhaven only has about 50 active residential listings and an ever-growing increase in potential buyers who are interested in moving their families to the area. We also know that there is a specific need for more affordable homes in our area, with many home buyers seeking homes in the $250,000 to $350,000 price range. According to our local economic area report for Lynnhaven, the median household income is a conservative $63,528 per year, or per family. In evaluating current mortgages loans for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, we find that the estimated monthly payment for a $250,000 home would be around $1,200 a month, whereas the estimated monthly payment for a $500,000 home would be around $2,500 a month. It is an irrefutable point to make that there is a need for more affordable housing that would be attainable to your average home buyer whose income falls within the median household income range. In considering the amendment, we know that each contractor has a specific budget for the property purchase that will allow him to build a home within a certain price bracket the market supports. New homes in historic Lynnhaven typically sell between $250,000 to $350,000. Purchasing a large lot at a higher price point would require the developer to build a house that would cost around $500,000. This value would not be supported by the local real estate market. Subsequently, I can't say that. Larger vacant residential lots will be more difficult to sell and will continue to stay vacant for many more years. Should this amendment pass, the city would be losing over 90 buildable lots. This is a potential for over 180 homes and families that could be added to the Lynnhaven community. Besides the obvious potential negative impacts of this amendment for home buyers, we must also consider the local economy and how it would be affected as well. with the potential additional homeowners and families in the area. These residents would be supporting the local economy with their tax dollars and purchases at local stores and restaurants. These residents would also be potential employees for the local areas. After COVID, we have all seen businesses suffer from lack of employees, and we know that Lynnhaven is not exempt from this. By creating affordable housing for the area, we are able to provide further incentives for living and working for Lynnhaven. Thank y'all so very much.
Thank you. Excuse me, I had the gentleman.
Thank you. Honored Commission, Bob Schultz, 509 Pennsylvania Avenue. Bob Schultz, 509 Pennsylvania Avenue. Before I start, I got a question. Will you answer my question if it's normal? I mean, I'm not going to run my jaws if you're just going to stare at me.
We're going to respond.
So nod your head.
We're going to respond to questions after the closure.
My question
of the
is,
hearing.
does this new ordinance apply to all types of property? You got commercial, you got mixed use, you got residential.
The ordinance would apply to low-density residential land use properties only in the 1911 historic plat area, not outside the 1911 plat and not inside the 1911 plat if it's anything other than low-density residential.
All right. Thank you.
It just makes me wonder if you guys really have researched what you're doing, because I don't think you knew the answers until now.
All right. Thank you, sir. Gentleman right here with the peach shirt, I think that is.
Thank you for letting me come and speak tonight. Listen, thank you for what you're doing. I'm a registered contractor, and my license are held here in Lynnhaven. I'm a little nervous, but my name is George Allen. I live at 1012 Michigan Avenue, and I've been a contractor here since 2012, and I think what we're doing is improving the revenue coming in for the city. When we can take 2 lots, and by the time I'm through with this lot, I got $130,000 in this lot, and I pay for the sewer, I pay for water getting there. It's no cost to the city, and I'm glad to do that. It's an opportunity for me, but I'm providing quality homes for families. Listen, when Hurricane Michael come through here, it destroyed a lot of homes here. I built 5 houses in 2018, and they didn't lose a shingle off the top. These are safety homes, and that's what I'm looking at as safety homes. But I'm asking the city not to separate this. What's going on is good. It's not a bad thing. And anybody that wants to go look at what I do, I'd greatly appreciate that opportunity, but thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Gentleman here.
Good evening. My name's Stan Peacock. I live in Moet Highlands. I've lived there about 20 plus years. I have 2 suggestions to this group. I got 3 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I've lived in Moet Highlands all this time. I've enjoyed living there. I do have some flooding issues. I have a city drain pipe in front of my yard. It's wearing out to the point that it's damaging my driveway, and I can't even park on that side of the driveway without risking my vehicle falling in a hole. And I have 2 suggestions. You folks need to stop issuing building permits to multi-family apartments that are stacked on top of each other and not require people to put trees in there. There is such a building process just north of Moet Highlands, and it's going to overload whatever infrastructure you think exists. And it's going to turn Moet Highlands into Moet Lowlands. And I think you need to think about what you're doing when you issue building permits to multi-families with no grass and no trees, and just stack them on top of each other. So please reconsider those issues of permits for that. The other issue is this, and I'm not an engineer. I do know a little bit about topography. I worked on a farm before I went to college. That's one reason why I went to college. but I can tell you about farmers. They use the highland and the lowland to their benefit. I've looked, and you've got a railroad that used to exist running out to the fuel depot. That railroad's elevated. Those engineers built it elevated to keep it out of the swamp. I think you own it, or at least great portions of it. And it's just sitting there, and it's high ground. Why don't you, because it's diagonally cutting across our city, why don't you turn that into retaining pond? Why don't you take that elevated soil, which is just growing weeds? I mean, y'all were talking about turning it into a jogging trail or a park or a bicycle lane or whatever. It's cutting right across your city. Why don't you take it, reduce it to a retaining pond, and take that dirt, which you apparently own or have control over, and build up the high points at the road intersection so that we don't have this major nightmare down here on Highway 77 and 389 and some of those other arteries. So how am I doing? I'm done, I guess. Please consider what I'm talking about, because I like it here. I want to stay. I don't want to be washed out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Stan.
Jody Moore on Amherst Street. I just want to say I've been a member of the Heritage Society for, 10 years or more. And I do think it's important, since we're talking about the historic plat, the original historic plat, I think it's very important to pass this amendment, this ordinance, in order to preserve the history, the quality of life in that historic plat area. So I really hope that you all will consider passing this. I hope you do pass this. I just think, especially since we're talking about other stormwater, and I can tell you, I mean, it floods over on that side of town. And I know that the historic plat includes this part of town too, over on this side of 77. But really, especially over on that area, it really floods over there pretty bad. So, and then you're talking about adding more housing to that. I just think that's a big mistake. And I know the developers that have, especially the people that have bought property, I understand they bought it with a certain understanding, but this 2012, it should never have happened in the first place. It really shouldn't have even been passed to begin with. And I understand the reasons for it, but it seems like people kind of took it and ran with it, some of the people who bought the property, and it's just too much, and especially too much right now. I've got a friend that lives on Virginia Avenue. There was a piece of property that had one house on it, and they built 4. And her yard is a marsh now. I mean, it never dries out. So please pass this ordinance. I think that the citizens, I think most of the citizens, I don't know if Pat heard from some people. I encourage people to talk, and I'm very thankful that you spearheaded this effort. I think that came from you, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Jan Rutherford. I was born and raised in Bay County. I have lived in Panama City, Lynnhaven. Now I'm in Panama City due to Michael. I'm wanting to rebuild in Lynnhaven. I recently heard about this proposal that they're discussing here today. If I understand correctly, if this proposal were to be passed today, many would not have the resources and or desire to build in Lynnhaven. I know I would not have the resources to do that. Thereby, it would also affect not only businesses, but the population growth of Lynnhaven. This proposal will keep new homes from being built, not to mention the effect it would have on local businesses. Without a growing residential business population, Lynnhaven will stagnate, which will affect the tax base. That's what we're all concerned about here this evening. That's all I've heard from people talking about it. You're going to have to pay to get what you need. And I totally understand that. But we've got to have people there to help spread these taxes about. Because increasing the tax base will help the ever-increasing cost of updating not only the public utilities we're talking about, but we have recreational facilities, governmental facilities. Our fire and the police departments need it too. Lynnhaven has been blessed with a steady, continuous growth since Hurricane Michael. It is awesome. Let's keep this momentum going. Please do not let the people of Lynnhaven down by passing this proposal. No one wants Lynnhaven to lose its growth or to become stagnant. Vote no. Let's keep Lynnhaven's momentum moving forward as you work so hard every day, and please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy McElroy, I kind of feel like I'm in an alternative universe right now. You heard all these people earlier talking about their houses flooding. The reason their houses are flooding is because there's no sponge to soak up the water. The sponge is vacant land without impervious surfaces on it. You need to pass this ordinance because it shows good faith, that you're listening to the people that are flooding. You need to lower your concentration, and you need to do the right thing by the people that are already here, paying taxes, that never had to get flood insurance before. That's what you do. You pay attention to your consistent and constant constituents. And then, after you fix what you need to fix with infrastructure, then you add more. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional commentary? No. And
Hate these things. Hate the glasses. Hate that. Okay. I appreciate you guys bringing this ordinance up, especially in this historic, that it is limited to the historic district. There's a large amount of area around the historic district that has newer infrastructure. It was built later. But as I am well aware, I have seen the clay pipes that we've been digging up and trying to replace around this historic district that were our water mains and all that, and they're failing. And as we keep building in here, I really appreciate this ordinance, and I think I appreciate anyone that votes yes for that.
yes, sir.
Johnny Bashir's 811 Louisiana Avenue. There seems to be a little bit of misinformation in the ordinance, because everything I see up on the ordinance says that the 15,000 square foot lots were not allowed or were allowed prior to 2012. That's all you had. That's not accurate. I've lived here. I grew up on Arkansas Avenue as a child, and I can tell you most of the housing along that road and in that area is on 75 by 150 foot lots, which is 11,250 square feet of lot. Now, 7,500 square foot lot, that was new in 2012 when that ordinance was passed, and I assume sometime in the prior to that, that 15,000 square feet came into play. But at some point in the past, that was not necessarily the case, because there's a lot of housing in Lynnhaven that's on 75 by 150 foot lots. The other thing in this ordinance that says that if you have an even number of lots, there's only that you've got to be 15,000 square feet. And the diagram she had up before showed 3 lots side by side that could be subdivided into build 2 houses that are 75 by 150. But at least in my father's case, he owns 6 lots, 3 face Mississippi Ave or Louisiana Avenue and 3 face Arkansas Avenue. They're an even number of lots. So his capability of building houses on those lots goes from 4 houses to 3 houses, because it's a contiguous block of lots that were owned as a contiguous block of lots on the 75 tax rolls, I assume. And that just doesn't seem equitable to me, that somebody that owns 3 lots can build 2 houses, but if you own 6, you can only build 3. In effect, you're making one of those lots worthless. And that's just my point of view. Like I said, I grew up here in Lynnhaven, and we always had a little bit of flooding, like not anything like we're seeing now. When all the roads were paved, which they weren't previously, it pushed a lot of water from what used to be on the roads into the housing next to it and gives it nowhere to go. So part of the problem is we have, over time, increased the impervious areas just by our paving programs. Think about all the side streets that go between houses and back and forth. Maybe we need to take some of that paving out and make it non-impervious anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to try and clarify something. The ordinance that you are looking at is the actual ordinance that was in place. The new ordinance is the actual ordinance that was in place prior to the changes in 2012. And it does read that the minimum lot area within the low-density residential district in the 1911 plat is 15,000 square feet. The minimum lot width is 75. A single-family dwelling may be constructed on a lot with less than 15,000 square feet and less than 75 feet in any land use district under the following conditions. So there are some conditions there, and basically what it does is relates to the number of lots that were purchased and recorded prior to 1975 in that 1975 tax roll. And what the gentleman was saying is correct. If you owned 3 of those lots, you could build 2 houses. If you owned 5 of those lots, you could build 3. To be able to build 4, you would need 7. So if he had 6, if you had even lots, then it went down to the uneven. So if he had 6 lots, he'd only be able to build 3. If he had 5, he could build 3. But this ordinance that you're looking at is the exact same ordinance that was in place prior to the changes in 2012. All I did was put it back to how it was.
Thank you. Public commentary? If not, is there a motion from the commission?
If I may, Mayor, I've solicited all folks to talk to me, and I'm glad I got a count here of like 4 votes for and 3 for no, but I have several emails, and one of them I tend to have agreed with, and in our pre-meeting we spoke about that there's projects in the works for these people, and I'm for protecting the historic plat and for what's there, but I'm also a proponent of business, and I think that the people who are set to build and own lots now should have somewhat of a time, a grace period. And we don't have that in this, and we don't have wording about to note that property that is contracted to purchase before the regulation change needs to be included in the period as well. And I see the points of the people, sir, and if you've got a lot of money tied up in different addresses, and I wouldn't want to stop present business going through right now. So I don't know. We talked about in the pre-meeting, we talked about a 6 month to a year as the planning board suggested, but the way this is worded, it's immediate, correct?
Correct. The way this ordinance was presented, it was an immediate effective date. And so if anybody wants to extend the effective date either to 6 months or a year, that would just have to be part of the motion. As far as people with projects in place or maybe about to buy some land, we could add that. I mean, there's a concept called the pending ordinance doctrine. So we've already done our first reading. We have an ordinance with a later effective date. So under that doctrine, really, it's in place, legally to avoid a sort of a flood of people to come and get applications in the door prior to the effective date. So I think what you would, if you truly want to extend it and give people who are in that pipeline time, you would pick a date as the effective date and not apply any sort of pending ordinance doctrine. In other words, you would allow applications to come in the door prior to that 6 months or year, whatever it is you guys pick, if that makes sense.
Well, we discussed it on Friday, and I'm of the, you know, I don't. Well, there's people with a lot of money tied up, and I don't want to stop them from doing their projects, but I want to protect the area. That's the quagmire here. So I'll ask for more discussion, or I honestly would like to make a motion that we table this till the second meeting in September, because there's people that emailed me that aren't present, and there's more citizens that I think we should hear from. That's my feeling as far as what the people I've heard from. And our biggest issue is going to be the next agenda item. Well, our CRA director hasn't spoken to us yet, and I'm sure we heard him at the pre-meeting. It's just that I feel like I'm wishy-washy, but I don't want to stop anybody who's in the pipeline, and we talked about that. I don't know how you feel, Ms. Tender, but
I don't think we should stop anybody who's in the pipeline, but that just depends on where in the pipeline you're talking about.
Yes.
I feel in a perfect world,
I'm sorry, are we going to make a motion to table it? Are we going to make a motion?
I'll second the motion to table it.
I'd like to make that motion to table it, but I still want to hear discussion from Ms. Tender.
Right, we're going to get that discussion, but you mentioned a motion, so I was trying to.
Had a second?
Yeah, so second, Ms. Tender. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got lost in all that.
I know, me too.
I think the pipeline all depends on how far back you're going to go.
Uh-huh.
I think in a perfect world, we would make it effective immediately, but I understand that people who have already purchased the property, if they've got money invested and they've already done that, I think they should be grandfathered in, or whatever you want to call it, to let them do their thing. But I also don't think that it should be so long that anybody with a $10 bill can run out and create a development and whatnot. If we're going to say you have to purchase, you have to build within a certain time frame, that might curb some of that. But again, I agreed with you from the get-go.
Yes, ma'am.
We have to protect the plat.
Yes.
Because it's getting ridiculous. And it's all about this. It's all about the money. And if we don't protect our city, if we don't protect what we have, all the money in the world is not going to help anybody when they're all underwater.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you. But
It'll look like Venice.
But the thing that made me want to table it, just to let you guys know, is that this particular email stating that under contract, and I spoke with city attorney because we got the pipeline, and then they got the same people that are under contract for stuff. So we got to be sure where we're going to cut it off, time and definition.
Right. I would love to hear from the person who emailed you that has so much in the pipeline that they want to see us sit on it for a while.
I'm sure, and I know this individual takes homes and turns them around, but he doesn't just do corner lots. He does, and that's the thing. There's a lot of opportunity within the plat from houses that are damaged that can get redone.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just, I think by protecting the square footage, we're protecting the plat.
Yeah.
And I tend to disagree with the CPAR saying that someone's going to build a $500,000 home on a bigger lot. They may still build a $300,000 home, which I know there'd be less homes, but there might be less impact on the infrastructure too. That's already stressed, So,
Mm-hmm.
and you can hear that from our utilities and public works people that we did hear.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a dichotomy here, and in all fairness, I would hope that we can get those people to speak, and I will forward you this email right now, okay. So you can share it, and we can talk about it at the next meeting or the meeting that we designate. So, City Attorney, I know by doing this we go backwards to a first reading, right? And you said I had to pay for the News Herald
Not
article.
necessarily. First, don't forward her an email. Either have him send it or send it to the city manager.
Okay, send the city manager, okay.
But second, no, I mean, not necessarily. You can certainly table it. Since it's the second reading, it would have to get, probably have to get re-advertised. So having you skip a meeting, that's going to help Amanda out. Only reason you'd have to go back to a first reading is if you substantially changed the text of the ordinance. So if you really just ultimately wind up changing the effective date, you wouldn't have to start totally over. You can just re-advertise the final hearing, second reading, and do that in the second meeting of September. So it all depends on what you guys change. Maybe you want to keep it on the agenda as a discussion item at the next meeting, and then actually have.
I would like, that would give more people another meeting. I would like to be on.
Yeah, not a hearing or reading of the ordinance, but just
Discussion.
as a discussion, and then have the ordinance come back in the second meeting.
And Mayor, can I ask this question? And you probably know the answer to this, city manager. If doing this, I understand why you're doing it and everything. Is it public record or is it public information that from this date until the next meeting, are we allowed to get the names of the people who are buying up property in that 2 weeks? Public information?
Should be on tax rolls, I would think. Property appraiser tax.
Property
I
appraiser.
mean, all that's available on the property appraiser and
Yeah.
the official records, the clerk's website. So any closing any deed that gets recorded, that's on the clerk's website, every day.
And Amanda, there she is. You have that information too, don't you? Oh, you don't have it?
No.
Okay.
I don't know when people buy and sell their property. If I look a property up, I can tell when it was sold or bought, but I don't know when that transaction happened.
Thank you.
Can I ask a gentleman in the audience, man at 1012 Michigan, sir, how many properties do you have in the pipeline? 2? Okay.
Commissioner Ward?
And I understand, I'm sorry. I guess
Go
we
ahead.
shouldn't sit and discuss this forever, but that piece of property, and I would love to be corrected, but it's my understanding that the piece of property that Mr. Outlaw's talking about faces 11th Street, doesn't even have an address, and like somebody previously stated, they're running the water and sewage from Pennsylvania all the way down to Michigan to accommodate 4 homes from that corner to that corner, and they're running it across the people's property. What happens? What happens to that? If somebody's home, the guy in the middle,
No, I get it.
the sewage all goes to heck and they got to dig up their pool.
When you dissect these lots is that, Bobby Baker explained it to me, is that you got to go in and you've got to cut in a new line, and sometimes you got to go across another property to do it. So it's a little
Is that
bit
something
weird.
a buyer knows?
Commissioner Ward?
All right. So I agree. My big thing is the infrastructure, and we're getting ready to talk about stormwater. And the last thing I want to do is, because we see when people build these new lots, they build them up, and then the water goes down, and then it hurts the houses around them. And so that's why I'm for the ordinance. I think the big question is how fast
how fast you want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And my worry is if we put a year and all of a sudden they build all of these houses at the same time, then we just exacerbated the problem. And so do we extend that out? I don't know. But I don't think the best choice is to table it tonight. I think we need to make a decision tonight, because my fear is if we table it tonight, are people going to go out and buy a whole bunch of lots and try to get in that queue so they can hurry up and build these corner lots?
I don't think it's going to go any faster than it already does.
House buildings building supplies are getting very expensive. I think it's going to slow down. So building supplies are getting very, very expensive. I think lumber's up 800%, concrete's up 80%, asphalt's up around 75, 80%. My point in saying that is I don't see a mad influx of house building that's going to take place if we wait 2 weeks. I mean, that's just my opinion, but.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I just feel like, in fairness to people who have invested, great sums of money to venture into these projects, that we shouldn't stop them immediately.
I agree. I agree.
So,
But are you going to give them a time limit to when they have to build?
well, I think that's why we should discuss it at the next meeting and then make a decision in the last meeting. We'll hear from more people. Possibly we can get a grip on how many projects there are. Right now we're kicking it around and we don't even know. So if we can assess and get a number on it, then we could put a time limit on it probably.
All right, so there's a motion to
Table to the
this.
second meeting and have the next meeting be discussion also.
All right, City Manager, if you'll call the vote.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Sure. Yes.
Thank you, Judy.
Mayor Nelson.
Yes. All right, motion to table passed. All right, agenda item number 10, public hearing for discussion and possible approval of stormwater rates, resolution number 2021-08364. Any comments from the city attorney?
Yeah, I'll just briefly introduce this. As you may recall, earlier this year in January, we adopted Ordinance 1102, which set forth our procedures to follow in the event we were going to implement any sort of non-ad valorem or special assessment. That's done under our home rule powers under Chapter 166 and the Constitution. So we have our own process in place if we want to do any special assessments. We've followed that process throughout the year, giving notice to the property appraiser and tax collector about the intent to use the uniform collection method of the tax bill. And then last month we adopted the initial assessment resolution, which authorized the publication of the notice of this hearing today, both in the paper and by mail. You've also all received a rate study that was commissioned by the commission. Sounds like at least over a year ago when we hired Stantec, a couple years ago. So you've all received that rate study and considered that. And so this hearing tonight, after the public's had a chance to speak, you'll be asked to consider the resolution which finally adopts a stormwater assessment to be placed on as a non-ad valorem assessment on the tax bill, and it makes certain findings. Obviously, it adopts the findings of the rate study and of the special benefit to every parcel in the city, and that's also the benefit is really by the relief of the burden of stormwater, and this is meant to not only fund your stormwater department budget, but also capital projects in addition to that, or at least partially funded. I don't think you're going to be able to fully fund it no matter what you do, but the relief of the burden of those stormwater management and controls that need to be in place citywide is what you're looking to accomplish here today with this assessment resolution. And if adopted, it will need to be sent to the property appraiser and tax collector before September 15th. And it authorizes the final assessment roll that was actually prepared by the consultants as well.
All right. Thank you. At this time, we'll open the floor to the public.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Commission.
One second, Mr.
Yeah.
We're opening this public hearing at 7:55
Okay.
p.m.
And we can, if we have city manager actually read you should go read the title now, and then we can hear from the public. Okay.
Yes. Resolution number 2021-08364, a resolution of the City Commission of Lynnhaven, Florida, relating to the provisions of stormwater-related essential services, facilities, and programs in the City of Lynnhaven, Florida, imposing stormwater service assessment against assessed properties located within the City of Lynnhaven, approving the rate of assessment, approving the fiscal year 2021-22 stormwater assessment roll, providing for notice and collection of assessments pursuant to the uniform collection method, and providing an effective date.
All right. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. During the election, I watched a debate, and I really respected how somebody could stand up and say, people of Lynnhaven deserve lower taxes, not higher taxes, and I wouldn't have voted to pass the tax raise. His opponent said, yes, I would have voted We needed it. I was kind of on the fence. Now, a few months later, we take a look at things and we see that there is the largest tax increase that we've had in many years on the budget for 2021. In fact, I think the total revenue goes up 24% if it's passed that way. And we're going to go and get around this max tax increase by putting a non-ad valorem so it doesn't fall under the auspices of the laws of how much we can increase tax rates in the city of Lynnhaven. Once we do this, it may not ever go away. Now, we say that we are going to dedicate this money for stormwater, but already in the budget packet of what we have and what we've seen over the last few years, there's already several millions of dollars that is allocated and spent on that. In fact, I think for 2021, it's $1.9 million as it sits, without the additional tax going into there. Now, I came in here to watch the debt management presentation because I think it's important for a city to be fiscally conservative. But I also think that when payroll is going up astronomically each year, in fact, in 2017, total payroll was $8.8 million. In 2018, it became $9.8 million. In 2019, it became $10.8 million. And then in 2020, it becomes $11.6 million. Now, in the 2021 tax year, it only goes up 4%, but now it's $12 million worth of payroll. Somewhere, we're not watching the back end, and we're asking the citizens to contribute more money out of a non-ad valorem tax, and we're going to raise your property taxes. This, I don't think, is fair. If we're going to raise taxes, then let's do it, and let's be fiscally conservative. But I don't think we should go and add another non-ad valorem that may not ever go away and will be there forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Mayor, City Manager, Commissioners. I'm requesting a variance tonight because I have some vacant land and my property is a watershed for the city. And the city should be paying me for the watershed, but we won't get into that. But I am requesting this variance because my EBU is 13.11, but I could only use 1/2 of my property because the other half is wetlands already. So this assessment is more than my property tax that I'm paying for the county. And I'm already paying 1/3 of my property tax to the city of Lynnhaven. So this is a double taxation for me, and it's not right. And so tonight I'm requesting my variance, and I would appreciate it if you give me that variance and don't charge me for this EBU.
Is the wetland approximately half of your property?
Yes, sir.
And it's moving water?
Excuse me?
It's moving water?
Yes, sir, it is. It's moving water from the cemetery in Lynnhaven. So,
I mean, that, to me, that he shouldn't be taxed on that. Do you guys, I mean, it's my opinion, but I don't see how you would have to be taxed on that whole part of land. The assessment, as we were doing the workshops, I felt the sticker shock for the vacant landholders, because you guys go from 0 to a certain amounts with a limit of 5 acres, and that's a hard pill to swallow. So I don't know other ways around it. And I asked whether we could do a step up for you guys, which it's a caveat. I don't know, but at least they should take a look at your property. And if you have moving water, I mean, you're already helping the stormwater system.
I am.
So
yes.
it doesn't.
And another point I would like to make, I was in the county and I annexed and got into the city thinking that it would be a better deal. But you folks got to help me. Thank you.
City manager, would you want to meet with him, or would you, or does he need to contact the property appraiser, or?
I'll get with you afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Don't leave.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service. My name is Cliff Myers. I own the property at 1002 Arthur Avenue. I certainly support the improvements to the city's existing stormwater system and recognize that there is extreme flooding in the city. I was born and raised right here in Panama City. I am having a lot of trouble and heartburn with accepting the fact that my property taxes are going to go from $16,000 per year to $32,000. So if each one of you were faced with your property taxes being doubled, I think you might be a little upset without having some avenue. I'm required by the city, by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the Wastewater Management District, to maintain the stormwater on my property that services my property's stormwater runoff, which is an additional expense that I have to occur every year. Because I have an effective stormwater facility on site, I don't exercise the same flooding that most people are, and I'm not insensitive to that, which is the reason I said I support where you're going with this. I don't support how you're getting there. The structure, Florida law requires the cost to the property owner to be reasonably and fairly apportioned. The amount of the stormwater runoff varies by property type, size, existing stormwater facilities, which the cities cost according to the level of runoff to manage the disposal of stormwater. I encourage y'all to look at the city of Panama City beaches. They have done the exact same thing in implementing a mitigation program where you can equitably adjust for people like myself that are caught with a 20-acre tract that has never flooded, services its own stormwater. And in 2012, I purchased 1002 Arthur Avenue. If you look at it, it was abandoned. North Bay had it as a school. It was the old Sally Mae property. Currently, there's 1,500 people employed out there that pay a sizable amount of money to Lynnhaven through a lot of variables. I caution you before you just arbitrarily vote something in, there could be a serious impact in Panama City. But thank you for all you've done, especially you, city manager. You have seen me about one important issue that we did
Thank
get
you, sir.
resolved. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir, with the hat.
John Hankey at 515 Missouri Avenue. I'm opposed to this tax increase. We don't need more taxes, and I don't believe the money will be spent prudently, because governments never do spend money prudently. And historically, as governments raise taxes, they cut revenue to the government. Look at the two highest tax states in the United States, are Illinois and California, and they're absolutely flat broke. You want to kill your government, you want to kill your town, raise taxes. That's one of my other point. Be more efficient. Don't raise taxes. Be smarter. Be more efficient about how you do things. I'm going to give you a gift, and you're going to love it. Just notice, the fonts are Times New Roman. That's the default font of Microsoft Word. If you switch to Century Gothic, easy to read, good-looking font, you'll cut your ink and toner bills for this city by 30%. I don't know if anybody here knows how much money this city spends on ink and toner. 30%, at least 30%. There was a university somewhere that did it, and they saved like $2 million a year. Apply that money to improving our drainage system. I've been here 11 years. The drainage system in this town has been absolutely neglected, absolutely ignored. While we built foo-foo projects, more parks, it's like taking an old worn-out car that needs an engine overhaul and a brake job, and you're painting it. Fix the car first, and then if we got money left over for a paint job, fine, we'll paint it. Fix the drainage system first. Check out a material called concrete canvas. It's canvas, but it's impregnated with concrete. Line a ditch with it, get it wet in 12 hours. It's rock hard. You'll never have to clean that ditch out again. Water is sticky and it's viscous. The more plants, garbage like my ditch on 6th Street, the slower that water moves. I know pipes are expensive, but frankly, I don't even know if concrete canvas is available in the United States. Look it up, though. It's an amazing material. And switch your fonts. What did I say? To Century Gothic. And you'll save a pile of money. And that's how you finance a city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, with the, come on, Mr. Walker, and the lady behind you will be next.
Rich Walker, again. For 25 years, every year, I've heard the same statement over and over again. In reference to a statement made by a commissioner, people don't trust politicians, no matter what you say. I've heard the same thing pushing this down the aisle for 25 years. I've had the citizens accused that the reason you've got a stormwater problem is because the people are not cleaning out their ditches. I only heard that a couple of weeks ago from this group. You're blaming us. Believe me, during the 25 years, I've gone in the ditches from 77 down to the bayou, clean them out, take the tires out, track through the mud. I've also paid for culverts to take the stormwater on my block away. All right? I've done my part, and the citizens have done their part here. Right now, you're going to tax them. Tax by any other name is still a tax. It's going to be controlled by the tax people. And don't delusion yourself to say that to these people of this town that if you don't pay your stormwater bill, your house won't be taken away from you. Yes, it will. It becomes part of a tax certificate held by the tax people, Bay County, and they sell it. They can do it. How long it takes, their business. I've heard the same thing over and over again. I was asked to take, where did all the money for 25 years go that was in the stormwater fund? It went to the enterprise fund. Where did it go after that? It disappeared into the cloud. We never got anything done. Now you're saying you're going to set up another tax and increase that every year until you satisfy a requirement. The only people that are qualified to deal with this are in Holland, in Louisiana, and the United States Army engineers. They can take care of it. In Galveston, Texas, they had this problem. They stopped it. You know how they did it? They closed the whole city down and then raised it. You've got to get somebody that knows what he's doing and take that money that you're going to get from us and wherever disappeared over 25 years ago and devote it to the proper attack to this. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name's Barb Handing, 703 West 10th Street. Appreciate this time to I didn't prepare a speech or anything, but from everything I've been hearing, it's been an issue. I just bought a home 2 years ago, and yes, my yard floods, and of course, it's an issue. But I was thinking I'm going to go pay for somebody to come out with those little, backhoes or whatever, and I'm going to just drain my yard down into the ditch that it's supposed to drain into anyway, and I figured I'd have to just foot that bill. Now I see that this is going to be a cost, and I'm having a very hard time coming up with my real estate taxes. They have gone up over 60% just in the 2 years that I bought this place. And it's affordable housing. Well, I was an RN over 40 years, forced to retire early, can't touch my whatever that is over in the banks. I can't touch it. So unfortunately, my real estate taxes is one whole month of income for me. And I'm not even one of these big houses either. So I think this $24 million that FEMA is supposed to be committing, maybe some commercial and business assistance with this expense for this infrastructure. I see 389 or 390, whatever it is, the widening of the road and everything, and they're putting in all these new sewers and stuff. I think that's awesome. And I'm thinking that FEMA helped us do that, and I think FEMA should help us do it too, and share some of that cost or come up with some other fancier ways to address this issue and pay for it. And the only other thing that concerns me is if we are flooding and our sewage is going into the bay, I think we need to be testing our beaches, especially the one up here by the bridge that goes to Southport. And if E. coli is in there, we should not be swimming. E. coli is found in every human feces. So if our sewage is going into our bay, we cannot swim in it healthily. You'll get sick. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you. Hand in the back.
Most of you know me, Holly Spring, 209 Shoreview. I was hesitant to come up and speak during the open commentary, you know what I mean, because it was more about the tax issue than it was about I haven't flooded, so I really don't have a right to stand here and yell at you because I currently don't have water in my home. But I did want to address the tax issue, and first I have to thank the city of Lynnhaven. Vicki, you are always responsive. Judy, always responsive. Mayor Nelson, when I emailed you, you responded immediately. I do truly appreciate a lot of it, so I just wanted to say thank you. My concern with this is this city has collected an awful lot of impact fees for all these lovely new developments. You've made an awful lot of money, and I guess my question is, where was it all spent? Happy to pay my $100 or whatever dollars that you guys need to stop those houses from flooding. But I want to know that there's some controls that that money is truly going to be used for the stormwater betterment of Lynnhaven. And I do want to see you guys hold accountable FDOT and the county for them not taking care of their ditches. You know what I mean? Give me an email. I know how to email you. Believe me, I can email them. So I think it's also a commentary back and forth between the community. And I guess that was the one thing I wanted to mention. I was much more angry when I sat down here and all those people were talking to you than I was after you guys all spoke. So not to move things around, and I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. I'm just saying you take the edge off when you guys speak first. It's much less adversarial, because all of those people came in mad, thinking that you don't care. And then you guys give your reports, you spend your time. Hey, we care, we've emailed, we've gone back and forth. We know the city prepared, Vicki worked her guts out. We did all of this. Yes, you still flooded. I'm sorry. You take a little of that edge away from all those homeowners who were so angry with you when you first sat down. So I just wanted to say that. Happy to pay my fair share, but I do want to know that this money truly goes where it is intended, because I do wonder where some of those impact fees went. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Corey Langford, 1112 Louisiana. First of all, I think everybody agrees that this thing's got to be fixed. And the question is how do we pay for it? Do we call it some assessment? Is it an end around to avoid calling it a tax? That now you've got people who are exempt from paying taxes, well, they're exempt now from paying this assessment. So we call it something different, but we got to pay for it, right? My only ask is that if you guys do go forward with this assessment, meet us halfway. Meet us halfway in saying, you get 12 months. We're going to pay you for 1 year. Only make it for 1 year, okay? And after next year, if you need, if the city's done their part and we've made some headway towards the flooding, I get it, it's not going to get fixed in 1 year. It's probably not going to get fixed in 3 years. But put a time limit on it, okay? Make it for 1 year. And next year, if you guys haven't done anything or the city hasn't done anything to at least make some sort of headway, then you know what? We're done. We're not passing this again. We're not paying this assessment. Put it in ad valorem. But to pass an assessment for an undetermined amount of time, I think is not fair to the citizens. You guys are going to have to pay the taxes too. I get it. But put a time limit on it. And if we got to set a benchmark, right? Meet the citizens halfway. We're gonna put forth some money to help pay for this, whether it's through a tax or some assessment. But let's put a time limit on it. Let's don't just do it from now on that we're just gonna pay this money. So thank y'all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mayor, isn't this, I'd ask the attorney or Stantec, this is up for renewal every year, correct? And it's not set in stone, like the numbers can be changed every year when the vote comes around?
Yeah, I've got a note of a couple items to bring up after they're all done talking, but that's correct.
Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually the physician that Commissioner Judy was talking about when she visited my house, and also Commissioner Jamie Warwick. And the Bay County Stormwater visited my house, and they said my house is soaked with water. And I had a meeting actually in July 20, which is a month ago, with the city manager here, yes. And we had actually Commissioner Jamie there, and we had Bobby Baker, and we had Chris Lightfoot. And they told me that if the city manager can remind us, they said my house is dry. A month ago, okay? Now we actually have a problem with credibility issue here. People who are in charge of the storm water, these people has been here for a long time. They've seen this problem. They never fix it. You ask us to pay for the problem that was created by a negligence from the stormwater department, to pay also for the problem that was created by the developers and investors, because I'm sure that if you check what they did is not sufficient to drain their area. And also it's dumping water on the neighbors like me. Another way actually why the city of Lynnhaven does not apply for a grant from the state of Florida. You need $1 million a year. The state of Florida can give you 10. The federal government just paid more than $100 million in South Florida for just one condo collapse. If we contacted the federal government, we can get actually some money rather than, you think it's approximately $75 to $150 on us and our tax is not big deal. It's a big deal because everything is going up and the life is getting difficult. We moved to Lynnhaven. I moved here more than 15 years ago, 16 years ago, because it's a nice neighborhood. Things actually are good, but it keeps actually going up. I am afraid that after they finish the development next to North Bay Haven, that will create another problem. You guys will come to us and say, hey, we have another problem with stormwater. Why? You do not stop the problem from happening. You are trying to solve the problem after it happens. We don't have a prevention here. You will come to us and tell us this. Not only this, we don't know how many children will die because the developer there, they don't actually make another exit. Only one exit next to school. I think this is time for us. It's not about stormwater. It's about our city. We're losing our city to hungry investors and the developers who came and created this problem for us. And we try to chase each other here to pay for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional public commentary? Yes.
My name is Tammy Robinson, and I actually live in your neighborhood in Moet Highlands at 1408 Inverness.
If you put a mic over this a little bit, yeah. Thank you.
I live in your neighborhood at 1408 Inverness Road. This is not about my neighborhood tonight. My daughter is a first-time home buyer. She bought her home in November of 2020 over on Colorado Avenue with her boyfriend. They were not told that their home had flooded previous. Their home flooded last Monday. They were in their home stacking their furniture and things that they knew that they could not get back. Water was coming in every wall, every door, and she was sending us videos, scared. We couldn't get to them because, the streets were flooded. All 5 homes on Colorado next to them flooded. Out talking to neighbors, they found out their home this was their 5th time flooding, and they were not told when they bought their home last year. I didn't know in the state of Florida that they didn't have to tell you this. I just was told this today. I don't know if that's true or not. Their neighbor next door is an elderly couple who bought 3 years ago. They were not told that their home flooded. This is their 4th time. They're 84 years old. My heart is breaking for them. My heart breaks for my daughter and the other 3 neighbors that are next to her that have also flooded multiple times. They did not have flood insurance. They didn't think they had to have it. Her boyfriend's beating himself up because he works for an insurance company and did not know he had to have it. He said, that was $500 that I had no problem paying if I knew that I had to have it. He took it out last week, but it is not going to effect till September the 18th. Well, a week later, this past Monday, the garage flooded and the water got up to their door. And that was just a rainstorm. They're worried because the neighbor next door said that they really don't want to put their house back together right now because what if this happens again this week or next week? So they're just kind of like, they don't know what to do. And I know that your hands are tied, and I thank you for everything that you have done. I just, what can they do? Do they have the guys come out and put the sheetrock back up, put the floors back in? I mean, I just don't know. They don't know what to do. And they love their community. They love their street. They love their home. They put in so much work in this short time, just like their other neighbors. And we just kind of want to know, what's the suggestion? They put sandbags around their homes. Their neighbors did. They did not because they didn't think they had any issues with flooding. But the sandbags did not help. So if you have any suggestions, I've tried to figure out how to make it into a boat. I've tried to figure out what can we do to, because they're in a loan for 5 years. They did that thing that was out last year for first-time home buyers, and just need some help. I don't know what to suggest. If you can help with what they can do. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. See us after the meeting and we can discuss it more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Arlene Harrison. I'd like to, I am very pleased that this commission is very seriously considering what to do about this stormwater. And, but I had a question, is I don't know how many years we've been paying on our water bill for stormwater assessment. I do remember, let's see, we bought this house in 1980. I don't recall, my memory isn't that good, how many years we actually paid for this. And of course it went into the general, it's not anybody here's fault, except maybe that law firm, I don't know. But that money went into the general fund, and it was never, and it was just disappeared like water. So I appreciate how you guys are really trying now to do something about this. And I want to make sure that that you can show on your books that whatever is collected is actually spent for what it was assessed for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional commentary? Thank you for your input. Before moving to a motion or discussion from the commission, City Attorney, any statements?
Yeah, just a couple things. The way this program is set up, it will require annual adoption. So this is obviously it's called the final assessment resolution, because that's the way we set it up. So you had your initial and then your final. The final would become the annual for this year, but you would have to come back every year, provide notice, do one annual resolution, and that's where you'll set your rates or make any other modification. So basically it's a revenue source that can be decreased or increased. So if you do get grant funding in, I know I've seen dozens of projects that we have grant applications for, and Vicki can speak to that. I mean, or if FEMA money comes in or any other sort of programs come in, obviously that'll affect your budget in future years, and you may not have to assess as much. So it's a tool, it's a revenue tool that you would have to look at annually and go through this process on or before September 15th of every year. So that definitely would always come back as long as you want to have an assessment. And as far as where the money goes, I mean, with the special assessment, it is going to be, it's like an enterprise fund. Even what was on the utility bill, you have your water goes to water, sewer goes to sewer, stormwater goes to stormwater. This will be the same thing. It'll fund your stormwater enterprise, which will help pay for your stormwater salaries and equipment and projects going forward. So the auditors look at that every year. You see it in your audit. They break out your general fund separate than your enterprise fund, so you can go back over all the years and see where your enterprise fund money's absolutely, I mean, just like your water and sewer stuff would be. So, and again, it's to relieve the burden of your entire citywide stormwater program. It is true, it's not a property tax. It is an assessment. I know a lot of people take it the same way, but it's not. The same exemptions that apply to ad valorem property taxes do not apply to assessment, so it actually is spread out over more people instead of just the non-exempt property owners paying property taxes. And as far as impact fees, I know Vicki can speak to where, I mean, that's dedicated. It goes into an impact fee trust fund. It has to be used on stormwater projects. And I know the consultant actually touched on our impact fee program in their presentation and plan that was given to you. So that's, that money is dedicated, has to be spent on stormwater. And what you're looking at here is funding the budget without having to borrow from water or sewer, taking into account grants you've received, taking into account impact fee funds that you've received, and your stormwater utility bill collections, which I don't think, and I will mention this later, if this is adopted, I know the intention is to drop that to zero and remove that stormwater utility fee. So I know that needed to be mentioned. That's all I had.
City Manager, any comments?
Yes, you want me to go? Yeah. Just a couple of things. First of all, I did propose to the commission, I think a month ago, and the commission preliminarily approved that, but this will come back in September when we do our budget, that the non-ad valorem tax will not be increased this year, will actually go down to 4.1 millage rate. Remember, it was at 4.3, but it will actually go down to 4.1.
Roll back the millage.
Yes, the millage will be rolled back, but you guys will pass that in September. You've accepted the preliminary suggestion, and then you will vote on that in September. So clarification there. Also, the City Commission, while we have recommendations for the past 2 or 3 years to increase water and sewer rates, we have not done that. Because of the fact we understand that there are a lot of fees involved. And so we kept it at that 4.5% rate. And while sewer and water may not be able to get some of those projects done, we kept it at that rate. And part of that problem has been that we then have to borrow from water to really fund stormwater. These are enterprise funds, and so all enterprise funds should be able to take care of themselves. And so that even the salaries within those enterprise funds are taken care of within those enterprise funds. Water takes care of water, sewer takes care of sewer, stormwater takes care of stormwater. That's the way that works. And I think that many of the residents know it's very important that you don't continue to transfer from one enterprise fund to another. It's not illegal, but it's just not smart. And then you've already hit on the fact that this is going to be passed every year, and we will assess, and we are looking at grants as they come through, and if those grants are approved, then yes, we will bring those back to the commission, and they will have it at the end of the fiscal year to be able to talk about whether or not they want those rates to be up or down. Impact fees. Impact fees can only be used for new projects. They cannot be used for improved projects of any sort. That is something the auditors are very serious about, and we will get dinged for that if we don't use impact fees in the correct way, and they look at how those impact fees are used. And so those are just a couple of things I wanted the residents to know. Ms. Orlean, I hear you, and I totally agree with you. Stormwater fees, stormwater should be used for stormwater, paying those guys that get out there. When I think this commission can agree, when most of them came on board, stormwater did not have any just about any employees. We're borrowing from streets, we're borrowing from water to try to help stormwater. And over the years, the commission has approved some positions to put in stormwater so it could help out. And all of those guys that you see out digging ditches and running the vac truck and doing all the things to try to help with the flooding, that's because we've added some of those positions to be able to do those things. And that's where stormwater will be used to mitigate some of those areas. While your project may not be on this project list, those are some very micro areas that we can fix with a certain amount of money to get in there and do those projects fairly quickly. I will tell you, Chris Lightfoot and Public Works and Bobby Baker have worked really, really hard to stamp out a lot of these projects that would have cost the city a lot of money, but they have worked really hard. But we're at a point now that those things are very, very difficult for us to do without those funds available. And so I just want to let you know that we will be good stewards, and I think we have been good stewards. You heard from the debt review committee today, and we will continue to be good stewards of the money if this assessment is passed.
All right, thank you. Thank you, City Manager. As a commission, we've discussed this several times, been in several workshops, presentations about it. Is there a motion for this?
You know, we've had 2 rooms with overflow of people talking about flooding. And as much as I don't necessarily like paying more than anyone else in this room does, I work hard for my money just like all of you do. We've got to try something. And if things aren't going right in a year when it comes up, if we just completely suck at this, in other words, we'll drop it. So I don't know if I'll get a second or how the vote will go, but I've got to, for all the people that are flooding, I move to approve the resolution.
There's a motion to approve.
Can I second for discussion?
All right, second.
So a couple things that came up. I forgot what I was going to say now. So when we collect these, it can only be used for stormwater, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to talk about was setting a cap on this, because I'm looking at the future rates. It's not sustainable for the future rates if we end up going with this. I don't know what the right amount is. I've been struggling with that, running different numbers and things like that, and I wanted to bring it up here and discuss it with you guys and you to see what you thought about that.
I think the amount, depends on what the budget is. And then, of course, the budget is going to depend on what projects we're trying to accomplish. Because although we're asking for grants, we're, petitioning state, federal government, we're not the only ones suffering with stormwater. So it's not as if Bay County is the only one, or even within Bay County, we're just asking specifically for Lynnhaven. Because like when we look throughout the state of Florida, stormwater is a Florida issue, from South Florida to East. Everyone that's on the Bay or on some type of, water frontage, they're all having stormwater. So I think that's part of the challenge we are having as it relates to the funding. And even when it comes to funding, if we get a grant, like we have a grant now for $1 million, or we have to match that with $1 million.
Right.
And so then it's okay, where do we get the funding from, to match that? So I definitely, understand. So it's, what do we do? Because at this point, from my understanding, with the fees that we're charging on utility bills, we're only getting around $333,000, but we have a $1.5 million budget. And so we're borrowing, like that 1.1 or 1.2 from utilities. Mm-hmm. And so I think at this point, we're just trying to stop borrowing from utilities so that we can fund stormwater. And so I guess we have to just look at what projects are we trying to accomplish. And although we have this Stantec list of 10 years worth of projects, I can tell you from Hurricane Sally and these last rain events, that project list has probably quadrupled from all the projects that we're trying to actually do.
And I understand all that. It's just, what we're trying to balance here is we're trying to balance providing a quality service for residents without breaking their pocketbook. And I feel like if we don't set a cap on it, my fear is that we'll go over that point where we're charging them too much for stormwater, and I don't want that to occur.
Well,
and I understand that it fluctuates every year, but if we don't set a cap now, then we can set it to whatever we want in future years.
Is there a suggested cap that you have?
That's why I wanted to open up for discussion, because I got some numbers in my head, but I just don't know.
I think what we could probably do, as Commissioner Aldridge mentioned, is, right now what we're actually doing is we're just voting to agree to this first year.
It is.
Yeah, and then over time we can have additional stormwater workshops and additional evaluation of, okay, how are we doing with stormwater projects? How are we doing with our assessments? How is the funding actually working? And then giving us more time to think about a cap as it relates to, how much we're actually trying to fund. So I think we give it this first go for this year, knowing what the rates are that we're charging for this year, and then just be mindful moving forward, what that cap could be.
Yeah, and one of the things that's difficult with stormwater, which is a utility enterprise type fund, where you see programs with like a fire assessment. Well, that always is paid for by your general fund. So really, your property tax dollars and any other state revenue sharing pays for your fire departments, right? So you can kind of do a cap word and say, well, we're going to do a fire assessment. We're only going to do 50% of our budget. We're going to keep the rest how we used to have it. So that's kind of an easier way to do it. With a utility like a stormwater, right now, we're not using general, but we're using water, water collections and sewer collections to do it. So it's hard to, I mean, you're already not able to pay for your budgeted stormwater expenses. So it's a little bit harder to, I see what you're saying as far as a cap, but that'd be, okay, X% of budget. That's hard to do. And that's not even to mention, projects that come up every year. That's just paying your salaries and equipment. So, I mean, it's something I think certainly talk about through the rest of the year, but definitely this is just 1 year. And so the way to set a cap is not, not do it next year, then it's back to zero. So
the other thing I wanted to bring up and let the public know is I went around to look at what the rates were in different cities in Bay County for water and sewer. And when you look at Lynnhaven, we're actually in almost every category the cheapest for water and sewer rates. And it all depends on how many thousands of gallons that you use. So I'll just give you some examples. Is for like 1,000 gallons, you're paying $28.86 a month in Lynnhaven, but in Bay County, you're paying $67.55. And if you go all the way up to 10,000 gallons, you're paying $114 in Lynnhaven, you're paying about $183 in Bay County. And then when you look at trash, we're the lowest. We're like $24.86. Some of the cities, you have to actually have a private hauler. And I actually watched Panama City Beach. They had a special meeting about their residential pickup. They have to get private haulers, and a lot of people getting two pickups a week. You got like 5-6 different haulers, and it's tearing the roads up. And I'm so glad we don't have that problem on top of the problems that we have. So it's just something to keep in mind. I know it still doesn't make residents happy, but and we're not the lowest on everything. But I just thought that was a couple things that I found. When you put it all together, it's not quite as much as we think it is.
Got it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Commissioner. We're doing good in those areas. To not do anything to me is doing what everyone's done, and you get the same result.
And not only that, correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole thing started in 2017. They started doing assessing the stormwater problems that we had. They went out there, did all this, and then we hired Stantec. I think it was late 2018, 2019, and they did a study. And so this has taken 4 years to get to this point. Yeah. And if we don't approve this tonight, we got to start all over again.
And then there was a grant, right? The grant from the Nature Conservancy, or wasn't that like those projects that we got the grant for?
That was NRCS grant, and that grant actually dug out all the.
Did that take care of a project though, right?
No, sir. That was for debris removal after Hurricane Michael for clean out the ditches. Is that the one you're talking about? NRCS.
Yeah.
That was a grant that came about to clean out many of the waterways, and that grant went through several cities in Bay County.
Gotcha.
And it had to really link arm in arm, because if we clean ours out and another city didn't, it didn't do us any good. And I will tell you that was very, very helpful right after Hurricane Michael to get so much of that debris out of these large waterways and ditches.
Well, I think one of the things we can do is, if we move forward and decide to pass this, is what I'm hearing from the citizens. I'm hearing a lot of no's to it. However, what I'm also hearing is accountability, is that, if we pass this, just make sure that we're going to do what we said we're going to do.
Yeah.
And, so that's the biggest part. I think us as a commission is just to make sure that we're doing what we said that we're going to do, when we pass this. And I'm confident that city manager, stormwater team are going to do what needs to be done to try to help alleviate our stormwater issues when they're able to receive the funds that they need to buy additional equipment and put it towards those projects to help us do that.
What will they generate in the first year, projected?
was it, I think it was like 1.28 million.
Yeah, 1.28 million. And then that is, that's not total funding, and Kyle, you can correct me if you're wrong, that's not total funding. That's with us transferring still some money from one of the enterprise funds until we can totally stand on our own.
What that would get us to is alleviating part of the transfer from water and sewer. It would still need about $800,000 from water and sewer and $200,000 from sanitation. It would require an additional increase to start to buy down some more of that to get to a full funding situation.
And how many years was that?
It's 2, right?
Sort of that scale. Was it like a 5-year scale that you all gave us, where we'll stop, just sort of decrease the transfer?
It really depends on the level of future year increases. And so the last plan we had presented was an additional increase of up to 50% would be required in order to get rid of all the transfers. And so it would really be, how quickly do you want to do that to get rid of the transfers? Mm-hmm.
Got it. Any additional questions for Kyle?
Oh, no, I don't have any questions for you. I do want to say this, though. I know that when we first talked about this, when you spoke last time, we said that there would be increases every year for 5 years to get us to where we had to be. And I think that's basically what you're just saying. But in the motion, if you will, you're saying now that we're not going to go by that plan, we're going to vote on it every year?
No, I think he's saying that it's up to us. What Kyle gave us was a suggestion on if we're trying to fully fund stormwater with stormwater fees and assessments, then he gave us a scale on how we can stop borrowing from water and sanitation so that stormwater can be fully funded. But what we're going to do is each year, it's up to us as the commission to vote to say, yes, we want to raise the fee, or no, we don't want to raise the fee or the assessment. And yes, city manager, we want you to borrow another $1 million from water and sewer in order to fund stormwater this year. But eventually what's going to happen is in 20 years, my children, your grandchildren, they're going to be here fussing at the next commission and mayor and city manager and city attorney about why our toilets won't flush because we're having utility problems because we've been taking so much from the utilities. So when we're getting like some of the sewer problems that we're having, I'm pretty sure that if we hadn't borrowed millions of dollars from utilities over the years, that they might have been able to alleviate some of those issues that we see with sewage running down the streets. So
right in front of my house, matter of fact.
Yeah.
Sewage. Yeah.
So it's up to us each year to decide on what we're going to do. It's not going to be an easy decision, but I think we have to make one and just keep our teams accountable on making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do with the funds that we're receiving.
According to the chart that I looked at, I brought it with me. The total amount for those 20 projects was $22 million. If we're going to collect around $1 million a year, that means it's going to take us over 20 years to just complete those there.
Right, and that's why we're also going to be petitioning for grants and funding. So it's not just looking for stormwater money from the stormwater assessment.
Have we already put some grant? Have we already applied for grants?
Yes, if you remember, included in that amount is the HMGP grants, and so we put those projects in there, and we're waiting to see whether or not some of those projects have been funded. And then once they're funded, then there's a 75-25% match. And then we're looking for another funding to pay for the 25% match of that. So yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
So on the numbers that, the tables you have for the projected numbers for the future years, were those kind of numbers based on worst case scenario or just projections?
Those are, projections working with city staff looking at how to prioritize and layer in the capital spending over 10 years. I'll tell you, one of the things over the course of this study is we've been actually able to lower the increases. So when I first ran the numbers, we had much higher rate increases. By working with staff, prioritizing, making sure that the annual spend levels are as annual as we can get. We don't have any big lumpy spikes.
we were able to lower those increases. And again, as time goes on, the situation on the ground will change, financing may become available. So you're able year by year to incorporate those changes and to understand where you need to set the assessment.
I just didn't know how conservative those numbers were. I know that's not a good question, but.
Yeah, I guess I would say is that incorporates the best information we have right now and the priorities on the ground and what needs to be done on a timeline to deliver those projects over the next 10 years.
And I think, like when you mentioned the cap, I guess every year when we evaluate, we're also going to be looking at, there's going to be additional properties that are being built, which will also add into the property assessment. So it will be something we have to look at.
Literally.
Yeah, each year. So when that vacant land becomes a house or, a multiplex, then that's probably going to change how that's being assessed. And then that'll calculate into what we're looking at with the stormwater rates. So at this time, we have a motion on the floor.
Can I just say something before we vote? And I know it's probably not going to be a popular thing to say, and I'm not trying to give the residents a hard time or anything, but we had multiple workshops on this, and we heard a lot of great feedback tonight, and we had a lot of people here, and I wish we had this many people here at every single meeting, but it would have been nice to hear that stuff early on. And even when I was campaigning, when this stuff was passed, the original time it was passed, before I was on the commission, I was going door to door, talking to people, letting them know that, hey, this is what's coming down the pike. Just want to give you a heads up. And I just encourage residents to please get involved, ask questions, please contact us, because we really do value your feedback. We really, really do. So that's the last thing I want to say.
Mayor, if I may, just the vacant land people, I'm going to stay with that. They're going to take a hit. And there's going to be special circumstances that we heard tonight. So we just have to hear what people are saying and hopefully handle their individual needs. And I know you guys do a good job of that already. But before we vote, I just want to make sure that we're gonna take into consideration the special circumstances that people bring to y'all. Like the things we just heard. And I really wish we would scale up the vacant land thing. I know there's a cap right at 5 acres, but it's still a pretty good chunk of change for somebody who wasn't paying anything before. So, but that's all I wanted to say.
All right, this time we have a motion on the floor to second. City Manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
No.
Commissioner Parno?
Yes.
Mayor Nessel?
Yes. Motion passed. Agenda item number 11 for discussion and possible approval of Mayor Pro Tem Resolution number 2021-08365. City Manager, will you read that by title?
A resolution of the City of Lynnhaven, Florida, setting forth the procedures for the appointment of a vice mayor or mayor pro tem, repealing all resolutions or parts of resolutions in conflict herewith, and providing an immediately effective date.
City Attorney, anything?
Yeah, just as we discussed in the workshop, this was brought up at our last meeting and just sets the process in place to rotate your mayor pro tem or vice mayor position annually at the first commission meeting in May. Seat 1 is in place right now, and that will just go to 2, 3, 4, and subsequent years. That's all this does.
All right. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make motion.
Second.
All right. Motion from Commissioner Tender, second Commissioner Aldridge. All right. Hopefully there's no discussion. Any discussion on this?
No.
All right. City Manager, if you'll call the vote.
Is there any discussion from the public?
Any discussion from the public? What happened to the public?
Yeah, right.
They left.
We're done with stormwaters.
All right. City Manager, if you'll call the vote.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Parno?
Yes.
Mayor Nessel?
Yes. Motion passed. Agenda item number 11. This is just the first reading of amended ordinance number 1115, City of Lynnhaven Special Events Ordinance, providing for the regulation of special events in the city of Lynnhaven. City Manager, if you read this ordinance by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Lynnhaven, Florida, regulating special events in the City of Lynnhaven, creating Article 3, Special Events of Chapter 42 of the City's Code of Ordinances, creating definition, requiring permits, providing for suspension of permits, regulating events on city-owned properties, regulating spontaneous unpermitted events, providing application and permit fees, providing for appeal, providing for enforcement and penalties, repealing provisions of ordinance in conflict herewith, providing for codification, and reciting an effective date.
Thank you. Anything, City Attorney?
Just to reiterate one more time, this in no way regulates private property, commercial or residential private property, as we discussed.
All right.
Get this advertised and come back for...
Got it. So there is no vote on this, so there's no discussion or anything on this. This is just first reading. Okay. All right. Agenda item number 13, discussion and possible approval of value engineering components for the Lynnhaven Fire Station. Fire Chief still here?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commission.
Good evening, sir.
As we discussed already, this is to repair the fire station currently located on Pennsylvania Avenue from the hurricane damages. When the base bids came in, they were well over $600,000. Myself, along with Hatchmont and McDonald, and the contractor were all able to come down to a resolution to the price of, I think it was $532,000. To bring that station back to what it was prior to Hurricane Michael. And I do have Mont McDonald, Mr. Billy Perry back here if y'all have any questions for that.
Got it. I guess the only question I have, Chief, is just getting clarification that currently in the condition of the fire station, you cannot let down your bay doors.
That's correct, Mary. In 3 years, we haven't been able to secure our facility. The millions of dollars of assets that we have in there are getting weathered. As you know, we just got our new arrival of our newest apparatus, which was $1 million or close enough to $1 million. It's raining on it. I mean, it's getting weathered. So, you know, if you want your equipment to last, we got to protect it. If we don't want to fix it, we'll just park it out in the sun, and we know what that does to vehicles.
Got it. Any questions for the Chief?
When do we expect it to be completed?
I think, Mr. Perry, I think it was 155 days once the contracts are signed.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, they're looking at least 12-week lead on material, and that was, you know, from a month or two ago, so they may even be longer now. Mr. Perry, can you give us any insight on lead time material-wise?
Right now, as of the last time that we spoke with the contractor, he did indicate that he would be able to hold his contract time within the contract. I don't recollect right offhand what the contract time was, but I want to say it was 180 days, but don't quote me on that.
And that's contingent upon it does not have to go through FEMA, because I have talked to Andy about that, so he'll have to look at that contract.
Right.
Any additional questions for the Fire Chief? All right, we discussed this on Friday. So do we have a motion for this?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Discussion from the public? City Manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes. Agenda item number 14, discussion and possible approval to waive late fees and have no cutoff of utilities temporarily at the discretion of the city manager. City Manager, any comments you'd like to make on this?
No, I think I was directed by the commission on Friday to put this on the agenda, seeing that there is, again, people are suffering because of the pandemic, and hopefully, this will help some of the residents out. Of course, our offices are closed in terms of people coming into the building, and we are doing things by online and other ways, but basically, this will just some way help our residents out, waiving fees, and we have not done any cutoffs.
My only question would be, I guess, is there an expiration of this, or we would need to revisit it, or like if we approve it now, how long does this go on exactly?
I think we just need to revisit it after it's all about COVID. I mean, that's what we're talking, that's why we're even talking about doing it. So I think we should revisit it in a couple months or a month or whatever you want to do every 30 days if
Because
we
it
need
does,
to.
yes, what I'll do is that since it says at the discretion of the city manager, I'll bring it back to where when, we're back on staff and things seem to be going well, I'll bring it back to the commission and say, I think it's time if you want me to do it that way.
I'm good with that.
And I'm sure that you see the curve. I mean,
Yes,
you see
ma'am.
how people are unable to pay and things like that. So
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think we should visit it every 30.
Is there a motion from the commission?
Move to waive the
Second.
late fees.
All right, so we got
I
a motion and a
second.
second.
Oh, you did?
Any further discussion from the commission? Discussion from the audience? City manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Perna,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Nelson.
Yes. So until I say adjourn, then like the meeting's not over, right? I want to wait one more minute. There we go. It's 9 o'clock, so we can say that we had a 3.5 hour meeting. Meeting adjourned.